Anybody else coming? Mary, did you know of?
This is all that I know of. We had a cancellation. Air Choice One contacted me yesterday, said they could not make it today, and hoped that we could accommodate them at a different time. Great Lakes is on the phone, but they didn't know about this meeting until Friday after their bid. They've also requested a follow-up time where they had more than basically 24 hours notice to come. So.
Okay, if that's the case, I'll call it meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Mr. Schaefer?
Here.
Mr. Bell?
Here.
Mr. Bergstrom?
Here.
Mr. Dance?
Here.
Mr. Gentile?
Here.
Mr. Hogg?
Here.
Mr. Peterson?
Okay. Mary, do you want to follow the agenda and do the officers now, or?
We might as well do that because that'll give me time to get these presentations loaded and.
So we'll proceed with election of officers. The first officer is the position of chair of the airport authority.
Nominate Brooke Schaefer for chair.
I second that.
Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? No other nominations? Roll call?
Mr. Hogg?
Yes.
Mr. Gentile?
Yes.
Mr. Dance?
Yes.
Mr. Bergstrom?
Yes.
Mr. Bell?
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes. The position of vice chair.
Nominate Doug Bell for vice chair.
I'll second that.
Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Any other nominations for vice chair? Being no other nominations for vice chair, call roll please.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Bell?
Yes.
Mr. Bergstrom?
Yes.
Mr. Dance?
Yes.
Mr. Gentile?
Yes.
Mr. Hogg?
Yes.
The position of
Julie?
treasurer. Do we have any nominations for position of treasurer?
Who's the treasurer this year?
Must have been Paul.
No. There's Russ Palmer.
This is where it gets interesting.
You would be checking into that, Rachel, weren't you? Is that something that you can do?
Yeah, well,
I could, yes. Yes, it's up to you.
I'll nominate Rachel Nelson for
I will second that.
treasurer.
Are there any other nominations for treasurer?
so it's big, so it's sent to you as a link.
Any other nominations for treasurer? Roll call, please.
Mr. Hogg?
Yes.
Mr. Gentile?
Yes.
Mr. Dance?
Absolutely.
Mr. Bergstrom?
Yes.
Mr. Bell?
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes. Last position is for secretary, and I nominate Rachel Nelson.
I'll support that.
Then the question
Well,
becomes.
can you have two positions in the
Yeah.
same slot?
Because the alternative is, you could,
Well, we could still have you as recording, and, the formality, have somebody else wear the hat, I would think.
yeah.
So you can do that then?
You can nominate.
She can
someone.
still function as it, but, not, probably not.
That's fine.
So who wants to be the secretary?
Second.
This side's busy.
I nominate Jim Hall.
Okay.
I like his handwriting.
I'll support that.
Just tell me when I'm supposed to be secretary.
Okay. Any other nominations for secretary? Any other nominations for secretary?
Wait for the coffee black.
Being none, take roll please.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Bell?
Yes.
Mr. Bergstrom?
Yes.
Mr. Dance?
Yes.
Mr. Gentile?
Yes.
Mr. Hogg?
Yes.
And at this time, I'd like to make a motion that we allow Rachel Nelson to be the recording secretary for the proceedings of the airport authority.
I'll support that.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. Moving on to the agenda. Everyone have an opportunity to read the agenda as presented by the secretary. Any additions or corrections to the agenda, right?
Nope.
If not, I'll entertain a motion to accept the agenda as presented.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I will second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. Moving on to my favorite part, public comment. Do we have any public who would like to make a comment? He shakes his head every month. Okay. Now we're going to go on to review of essential air services proposals.
Okay, with that, just see if I can get, so I got a little presentation to start us off with, and yeah, why don't we do some introductions? That would probably be a good idea.
Okay. Obviously, I'm Brooke Schaefer, Chair of the Airport Authority Board.
Andrew Gentili from Little River Casino Resort.
Doug Bell from Manistee National Golf and Resort.
Brandon Jensen, Right Side Design Group, we're the marketing agency with the Airport Authority.
Barry Lind, I'm the airport director.
Rachel Nelson, secretary slash treasurer.
Mark Richardson, County Commissioner. Jerry Hawk, retired resident of Manistee.
Jeff Dons, County Commission.
Jim Gallagher, Public Charters, North Country Sky.
Brian Murphy, Boutique Care.
Sean Simpson, BT Care.
Anyone else like to identify themselves?
I'm just sitting in the background. I'm Gail. I'm
Okay.
Julie, North Country Sky.
I'm Dylan from the newspaper.
So, are you all set?
I am. So, just on the technology side, just so everyone's aware, we actually do have someone on the phone. Doug Voss, who's the chairman and CEO of Great Lakes Aviation. We have a camera that's recording and live streaming this to YouTube, and also, if everything is working, I'm also live streaming everything that's being shown on the display. So we have a record that is both readable as well as that catches the audio and the video for the room. So with that, let me start with a few slides that just kind of introduces, mostly for those on the board, the process that we're in the midst of. And I know with this meeting, Mr. Gentili this is his first meeting on the board, so a lot of learning to go on today. But it is also true that everyone who's sitting on the board has not participated in this process before. The last time we've done anything like this was 4 years ago. We were we're at the end of our 4-year contract. Therefore, pretty much everyone else on the board is new since that time. So part of this is the whole board.
I was here.
You were here 4 years ago? Okay, wow, okay. I misspoke there. So let me switch over to find my presentation. Display onto the screen.
We're being sued with the pastel colors of the screen. Everybody should be nice.
Okay.
Remember the great smoky mountains.
Okay, you're not seeing what I
Probably the tab.
I just test the whole screen, just. Sorry.
city is that?
New York? Trying to recognize the bridge there.
Nashville, maybe?
Okay, now, right.
Think that was Nashville?
Nomination.
One of the buildings look like downtown Nashville.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Big one, big enough.
Okay, so just a quick overview as to what is happening today, or the EAS bid process. So the U.S. Department of Transportation releases RFPs for essential air service generally every 2 years, unless someone opts for a 4-year contract. We were in a 4-year contract, thus it's been 4 years since we've done this process. They released that RFP on November 22nd, day before Thanksgiving. What this is, and this is something that we'll be going between today a few times, is standard essential air service and alternate essential air service. We currently have service through our carrier under the alternate essential air service program. And it's different, and I've talked to the board about this in the past, but there are differences in the process, and in some ways they're two separate processes. So what I'm talking about here is about standard essential air service. This is the process where DOT goes out, requests bids, community provides input, and at the end, DOT makes a selection for our airport. We don't necessarily have a say in that, other than we have a comment period. And that's some of these other items here. So the airline submittals were due last Thursday, January 4th. We had 3 responses, or DOT had 3 responses. Boutique, Air Choice One, and Great Lakes. We have Boutique here today. Air Choice One was planning on being here. I got word from them late yesterday that they weren't able to make it. And then Great Lakes is on the phone. Comment period started on January 5th when those bids were released, and extends, I meant to double check that date, it's first part of February, I don't know if it's the 7th exactly or not. And basically this 1-month window gives us, as well as anyone in the public, the opportunity to comment on the 3 proposals that have been submitted to DOT. DOT takes that input then and would make a selection. They have various criteria that they utilize to make that selection process. Some of those are specified in federal statutes. Others are more informal processes that they anticipate. I would say, based on a lot of conversations I've had over the last couple of weeks, it appears that their processes for evaluation are changing. And I'm not really sure that anyone knows what the new ground rules are. Mostly due to the new administration and changes in leadership within DOT. For example, it has traditionally been almost a guarantee that whatever option the community supported, DOT would ultimately choose. In the last 3 weeks, I think I've seen 3 out of 4 awards go against the community's choice. Often with good reason, and it's not like, oh, the community's choice was being completely ignored, but it does appear that dollars and price is taking a much higher priority in the decision process than it has before. That's always been a factor, but there are many other factors as well. So that's just FYI, and I'm sure some of those in the room or online could enlighten us more with potentially what they know in that area. So this is all standard EAS, and as you know, there's nothing on here that talks about, or we have not received a proposal from our current carrier, because they operate under alternate essential air service. And I'll flip over to the next slide. So, with alternate essential air service, instead of DOT choosing for us and the DOT directly contracting with an airline, alternate essential air service is the process where the airport or community basically utilizes the same amount of subsidy to craft what we feel is our best service option. We have now done that the last 2 contract periods, so the last 6 years. It puts a lot more responsibility and work on our shoulders because we are now the contracting agent. We basically just receive a grant from DOT. We then contract with the carrier and basically, provide, get what we want, or hopefully what we want. One of the things that alternate was created to do was to allow a lot more flexibility for communities and airports in the service they receive. So basically, with alternate, all of the mandatory requirements, it must be this size airplane, it must operate this, it must have this many pilots, all of those basic rules, which are there to provide a minimum level of service, go out the door, and we can basically pick and choose what we want. In the legislation that created alternate EAS, there are discussions there about if you wanted to have scheduled bus service instead of airline service because you felt that would better work for your community, that would be something allowable under this. So it's broad ranging. Ultimately, DOT has to agree with whatever we would propose, and sometimes there's back and forth as to how they would like to see things done. But as you recall, we were the first 6 years ago to successfully get a proposal under alternate approved. Now, how do these two come together? And this is where it gets a little bit weird and, quite frankly, a little bit awkward, is DOT has said alternate doesn't just have a blank checkbook. You can't just go to DOT and say, we would like you to subsidize us for $10 million to do something wonderful for us, but expensive. So their current working paradigm is, and this also is an area that might be changing recently, but they want us to go through a standard EAS proposal. That then essentially sets the base amount of subsidy that we could utilize to go down the alternate path. So the standard proposal process that we're in the middle of is kind of step 1. We can look at all of those bids and say, yes, we like, or we don't like. If ultimately we think there's something better for us, we can essentially take that amount of subsidy that process essentially sets to then make a proposal to DOT for alternate. Now we've got a month to do that. This meeting is only a few days into that month, so we've got plenty of time, but a lot of things can and need to occur during this month for us to decide what's best for us. Does that make sense to everybody?
It's the same thing you've said.
I know, but I've got a new person here, and therefore I need to make sure that everyone who's making a decision is up to speed.
Repetition is a good thing.
And also, for some of the airlines, they're not necessarily as familiar with how this works. I had a conversation with Great Lakes yesterday trying to explain some of these details as well. So, that's enough there. So, here's a slide I'm putting together that just shows 17 years of basically passenger history at this airport. And let me actually run up to the screen. So 2000 through roughly roughly 2003, we were being served here by Great Lakes, 19-seat Beech 1900s. Quite honestly, and into Chicago at this time. For whatever reason, and this predates me, I came here in 2008. We weren't being all that successful with, United Express branded into a United hub back in that era. In 2004, Midwest Express got the contract and we switched service to Milwaukee. And we saw then a fairly significant, a doubling of enplanements over 4 years. Midwest basically got out of their small aircraft. They were operating Beech 1900s as well as that time. They got out of that market. We actually had in 2008 a 2+ month lapse in service where we had no service as they basically stopped operating and we had not yet secured continuing service. Great Lakes came back in, again with service to Milwaukee. That first year, 2008, was a little bit rough because again, 2.5 months we had nothing, so that decreases numbers. Built back and actually in 2010 exceeded where we were with Midwest. A difference though is that actually prior to 2008, so all through here, we were operating one-stop service with some connecting airport. With Midwest, it was Muskegon, so our flights were here to Muskegon to Milwaukee. And Julie, do you know what we were?
It was Muskegon.
It was still Muskegon back then too? 2008 was the first time we had nonstop service, so I think that portrays a little bit of why we were able to recover and exceed where we were under Midwest. 2011, the crazy, wonderful year that it was, and sad in many ways, was the basically 10 months that we had service from Frontier when they acquired Midwest Express. Great Lakes was looking to get out because there were some service issues and we were the farthest east station on their network at the time. So Frontier came in and things changed overnight as to what really showing what the potential of our market is with quality service that is to a connecting networking hub, et cetera, nonstop, all of those things. Happen to be regional jet, so all of those things are positives. They had, as part of their contract, a 180-day termination clause. They decided to exercise that. We went through bidding, ended up deciding to go the alternate route with public charters. However, by the time DOT actually got that approved, we had another 2-month lapse in service in between when Frontier stopped in March and when public charters started in May. That summer we had service by ADI, and they went bankrupt in October. We had another month lapse of service in the fall. And then Corporate Flight Management started the subcontract with public charters in basically mid-November 12 and has continued through today. When they started, Corporate Flight Management did not have commuter authority, so they could only fly 4 times a week. So we had approximately a year of very minimal flights, augmented in the summer with Ultimate Jet Charters providing flights a couple days a week in the summer of 13. So we rebuilt, and for the last 4 years things have been fairly stable. Not perfect, but fairly stable. And we've been growing just shy of 10% a year, and it's really our most consistent period of time. If you look at where we were in early 2000s, we were at roughly 2,500 passengers a year total. We're now, just this year, we just eclipsed 10,000, and we have an example as to what the total market potential is. So that's for board, it's for everybody else in the room. But I thought that was a good baseline because as we get into the board's discussion of factors that we're looking for in service, they come out of our experience and our history. So, this is now to remind the board, 2 months ago we spent a couple hours in this meeting talking about what the criteria that the board felt were important in evaluating the essential air service proposals. These are in no particular order, they're just the order that we wrote them up on the board that meeting. And they're not necessarily weighted as to what's most important of these lists, etc. However, as we go through this process, I would recommend that we utilize this work we did 2 months ago to score and look at and evaluate the proposals before us. So, just to remind everybody, so number one, and again, not in any particular order, first, capacity to handle our seasonal demand with growth. As you all know, our top priority from our strategic plan is to ultimately achieve 10,000 enplanements. And again, when I'm showing those passenger numbers, that's total passengers, not enplanements. Take those, divide by 2. Enplanements are just those boarding here, not those deboarding here. Frontier year, we were over 10,000 enplanements. That's the only year in our history that that occurred. This year, we're basically halfway to that 10,000 number at 10,000 total passengers, about 5,000 enplanements. We've been growing about 10% a year. So this item talks about being able to handle our current capacity with anticipated continued growth of at least 10% a year. We would, again, from our marketing goals, our goals are to grow 20% a year, but we've been achieving 10%. Twin engine aircraft has been mentioned as an important aspect, primarily because of our preferred hub locations and the big body of water that sits between us and that hub. And obviously, boutique does not fall into that category, and I'm interested to hear how you address that for us. Larger and jet aircraft are preferred versus smaller aircraft. From a passenger perspective, that's something we hear. But again, there are other factors that can play into that perception. Schedule is important. We have been blessed throughout pretty much all of that timeline of having a RON, which is basically an aircraft that remains here overnight, such that we have an earlier departure in the morning, a later return in the evening, so that you have more opportunities to catch connections. Evening is especially important to getting West Coast connections coming back in. Morning more conducive to business travel, because they don't want to waste an entire day traveling. Pricing, this is obviously important because pricing can, incentivize passengers to utilize our facility or disincentivize them. An example is that we kind of had an accidental test on this 2 falls ago, I think it was, where we let our prices increase about 10% over what we've had essentially in place for the last 6 years. And during that period of time where prices went up, we saw about a 10% decrease in bookings at that same period of time. So we know that there is price sensitivity to our market, and it's probably more due to our product because it is different than you're going to get at other airports that you have as options to go to, because it's not going to be regional jet service on a familiar national brand per se, and that means that you're more susceptible to, well, I'm intrigued by the price, until either I have a bad experience or something else happens to move me away.
The increase in that price can also affect our connection market because of
Yes.
those who are
Yes.
choosing to connect.
Right. And again, that is something that we want to talk to. Is there's 2 aspects to pricing there. And one of it is, and what we focus a lot on, is our pricing to our hub. Because for the last 6 years, we haven't had interline or baggage agreements that allow us to seamlessly connect on. So a lot of our marketing has been focused on, attracting travelers who are interested in our region from the Chicago area. Pricing, though, with the right circumstances, with interlines or co-chairs or all those things, then the connecting total fare becomes equally important, if not more important, than just the short hop, although both are and both play a role in our continued growth. Reliability, and this, I'll say personally, I put this as the number one of all of these criteria, because one canceled flight, one set of disgruntled passengers, all of their friends and their friends' friends now have the impression that we're not a reliable airport to fly out of. And unfortunately, because we're smaller, we don't have as many other options to get people someplace if something goes wrong, and therefore that bad word of mouth is always a marketing challenge to overcome and to build upon. We have been blessed for the last 6 years of having, by industry standards, good reliability, or actually very good reliability, I should say. And later in this meeting, this last month is an exception to that, unfortunately. Interline baggage agreement, again, our service is very, very seasonal. We have a huge peak in the summer, and that is due primarily to the nature of our service. Because we don't have today interline and baggage agreements, we market the heck out of Chicago. Northern Michigan is a tourist destination for Chicago. Better to fly than to drive 5 hours to your summer home, your summer vacation, your friend's summer home, whatever it is, whatever reason you're coming up here. We can handle that with our current service. Because we don't have an interline this time of the year, especially our low peak, our off peak, there's no one coming up here to vacation. Unfortunately, we haven't developed that snowmobile market in Manistee yet. Golfing is just not happening. Sorry, Doug. And because we don't have those interlines, it's hard for us to grow our off-season traffic, because that's where those interlines really come into play and would really be helpful for us to grow. Board, does this sound like a good recap of what we talked about 2 months ago and the last month?
Pretty close.
Okay.
Pretty close.
Okay, with that, we got 3 proposals. And actually, Air Choice 1 had 2 variants in their proposal. And I'll just briefly cover them. I know you were emailed these over the weekend, so you probably read them, but just kind of seeing it on one page. Air Choice 1 had one proposal that is basically 2 round trips per day to O'Hare with a 9-seat version of their Beach 1900. Nowhere in their proposal do they mention it's 9 seats, and typically the Beach 1900 is a 19-seat air carrier. They don't have currently operating authority to operate it more than 9 seats. And I actually had to do some math on their available seat miles to actually calculate what it was they were actually bidding. If you do the math, it equates to 9 seats. 2 daily, year-round, 2,824,000, or 3 round trips daily at 3.4 million. Their proposal talks about that 3 being seasonal, but the numbers they have basically are the equivalent of 3 year round, so I'm not really sure, and obviously they're not here to answer these questions yet. Boutique's proposal, 3 round, well, their proposal is 1,872 trips yearly, which if you do the math is 3 round trips a day. They make no mention of seasonality, but I have a suspicion the yearly alludes to that, and I'm interested in hearing their explanation on that. To O'Hare again, with either an 8 or 9 seat configured Pilatus PC-12, which is a single engine turboprop aircraft, but in some ways probably the nicest aircraft of any of these proposals because it's a modern new aircraft that in some ways offsets some of those negative things that we had talked about as saying were important to us.
And it's a very cool picture.
And then finally, Great Lakes Aviation has proposed 2 round trips daily to Milwaukee with their 30-seat Embraer 120, which is a twin-engine turboprop, which is very equivalent to service we've been seeing in the summers here with the Jetstream 41s, which are a twin-engine 30-seat turboprop, and their bid is just shy of $3 million. Any questions? Okay. If not, we can probably then move into presentations. I would recommend that we do boutique first because really we're focusing on the essential air service proposals today. But I know Jim also has some information for us that he would like to share. Again, Air Choice 1 and Great Lakes have requested a follow-on meeting that they could attend to basically flush out their proposals. So,
That's going to need to be done before February 7th.
oh yes, yes.
And just to clarify, I thought, reading it again, that Great Lakes also said O'Hare.
Their proposal is to Milwaukee.
Right.
They have said that they would investigate O'Hare.
Right.
Seasonally offer Chicago air service,
Right.
subject to coordination with Community and United Airlines for gate availability.
Which means there's a lot of
There's
volume in there.
So one thing I would mention before we go into presentations is over the last month I've had lots of communication with other carriers that decided not to bid, and I'll briefly touch on that. So, and I kind of indicated to some in this room of one of those that I felt was going to bid, but basically contacted me the day before bids were due and said that they decided not to, and that was SkyWest. SkyWest was planning on 50-seat regional jet service. Their proposal was actually being based around us having some sort of a one-stop in Muskegon on the way down to Chicago. Muskegon was lobbying for us because Muskegon does not have the overnight flight, and their travel out of Muskegon is heavily business dominated, and the lack of that early morning flight is hindering their growth. By combining the two of us, the idea was that might make financial sense for SkyWest to have an overnight base here, stopping on its way to Muskegon. The issue there, according to SkyWest, was gate availability for United in O'Hare. They indicated that when they did their legwork that they couldn't secure a United gate anytime between 9 a.m. or 6 a.m. and 10 a.m. So if we wanted to do that, we could have had a 4:30 a.m. departure out of here, which I said was not reasonable. The two people that would get up that early who needed it just wouldn't justify operating a 50-seat jet at that time of the day. But that would get them into Chicago at 5:30, which they could have a gate that early. So they decided they couldn't do the pairing. They then looked at whether or not they could service us without the overnight and just do a couple middle day turns. They decided it didn't make sense at this time where we are with our growth for that to occur. And also I don't think that would have been as beneficial to us as if we could have had that overnight. Because for us that morning may be less important, but that evening is very important for us to catch connecting passengers. So, no SkyWest. ADI / their new branded name is now Sky Value. They obviously provided service here to us in the past with their Embraer 145s. They declined to bid, and their reasoning was that our runway is too short for them to operate here and carry full loads. They obviously operated here, but it only becomes an issue when you really get north of that 40 passengers on the plane type environment, where weight restrictions, especially on a hot summer day, are going to start impacting. So that was their reason for not bidding on us. And as that relates to our strategic plan, that is one of the reasons why we view it as important to get our runway extended to 6,500 feet so that we have more options as it relates to new service. And I've already pulled that email aside because it will be some part of a presentation to FAA at some point in the future as justification why we need a longer runway. The third carrier that I interacted with is Cape Air. They were just awarded a bid into O'Hare in December for Decatur, Illinois. They've not operated into O'Hare previously. Their operation is St. Louis based in the Midwest. They also do Montana, East Coast, Caribbean. They're actually a large carrier. I had a long conversation with them about 7 years ago. Andrew Bonney came out here, we visited, and at that time he told me they decided not to pursue an interest with us then because they wanted to, if they were going to go into O'Hare, they wanted to make sure that they had some synergy and some more than just one outstation into that hub market. So when I read that they were going to have one station into that market, I thought, hey, now might be the time, but that did not turn out to work. Although it was realistically only 4 days before bids were due that I reached out to them after the holidays. So those are who didn't bid. Now we have those who did. And with that, I'm going to bring up Boutique's presentation. And let me see. It's this one. So I will turn it over and wave at me when you want the slides to change.
Okay, great. Is that a, well, that's wireless, I could potentially just do it.
I've got too many other things going on to actually have gotten that done.
Great, well, first of all, I just want to say thank you for having us here. I'll do a quick intro. Brian, you want to go too? I'll introduce you. So, my name is Sean Simpson. I'm the CEO of Boutique Air.
Brian Murphy, CEO of Boutique Air.
And just typically we just do a quick background. So, I grew up in California and in school out there, worked in technology for a while, and was in New York and helping an aviation company with their technology, and just got the aviation travel bug and moved back to San Francisco and started Boutique Air. And that was in 2009. And we kind of did computer stuff for a few years and finally became operational in 2011. And things kind of grew from there, which we'll go through. Brian?
I'm also from California, native, and had a prior life in the military as a KC-130 pilot for 10 years. I got out after managing maintenance and operations divisions there, and long story short, stumbled across Sean when Boutique Air was 0 aircraft, 0 pilots, 0 revenue, and have been along for the ride ever since. So it's been fun, and I think we're doing a pretty good job so far. But I'm biased, obviously.
All right, great. Well, we will start going through these slides here. So Boutique Air is just a picture of some of the folks in San Francisco. It says started in 2007. It's really complicated, but it's more like 2009. But anyway, we started back then. Didn't really do anything other than technology and research for a few years. In 2011, we got our first Pilatus. In 2014 is when we actually started our scheduled service, and we got a one essential air service contract from Clovis, New Mexico into Dallas-Fort Worth. And that ended up being hugely successful, and a bunch of other communities started talking to us and asking us if we could do their contracts, bid on their contracts. So over that time, since just in the last 3 years, we've grown from 5 people and 1 plane to 450 people, about $60 million in revenue, and and we've got about 26 airplanes now. So it's been a crazy few years for us. And that, so this is a newer thing in a lot of ways, but part of the reason we've grown so much is because we focus on customer service, reliability, and technology as well. All right. Okay, so the Pilatus PC-12. This is one of the main reasons for our success. I'd say we chose a really good airplane. You guys, some of you I'm sure have heard of it, maybe you've been in one, some of you not, but it is it's a great plane, and over the last 10 years, there's been a little bit of a shift in aviation, especially when it comes to turboprops, in the paradigm of what's safe and what's good. And it's shifted a little bit from, at least especially for this size airplane, being single engine being unsafe to single engine being very safe. And the reason is just the reliability of these engines. A turboprop engine, this one has a Pratt & Whitney PT6 engine, is just considered to be outstanding. And when you look at all the analysis of twin versus single, at least for this type of plane, there's not really any difference in terms of safety. So this plane is in production. It's one of the most successful planes in aviation. They crank out about 60 or 70 of them per year. It's made in Switzerland, and it carries 8 or 9 passengers. So next slide, I think we've got an interior picture here. So it's just a really nice plane. People feel like it's sort of a private jet type of experience. It's not a huge plane. I mean, there's no doubt about that, but it is very comfortable. And when people are flying in it, they tend to feel like they're being treated well, something kind of special, and that's a great reason for our success. Okay, and we do have, there's a lavatory in there. There's power outlets and so on. In terms of how the PC-12 compares with some of these other planes, it's actually fairly similar in a lot of its characteristics. It goes about the same speed. The Embraer E120 is a little bit faster here. These ones are about the same. And it's pressurized. It's quite a bit quieter. So people like that. It's easy to have a conversation with someone in the plane. And one thing that's not up here, every seat is an aisle seat and a window seat. But there is a lab. It's small, but it's there, and it's not. Some small planes have a curtain, which is a little uncomfortable in some ways, I guess you could say. This is the way they set this up is it's got a wooden door that you just open, and it's fairly well designed. So that is usable, and then. In terms of the value, these planes hold their value tremendously well. As I said, it is in production. That's a kind of, from my perspective, a pretty key thing. If any of you are thinking about starting an airline, one thing I will tell you is it's better to start with a plane that is still made today, because you've got parts and planes and everything is easier. If you're trying to operate a plane that is no longer made, you have a lot more challenges with it. And that's for example, these planes here, they're not made anymore. So that means there's going to be more problems with parts typically. All right. Okay, so then this is our route map. It might be kind of hard for some of you to see, but like I said, we started here 3 years ago in playing in Dallas-Fort Worth, and then just over the course of the past several years, we've grown a lot. So one of the things that you will see here that is unlike other companies is that we've got these outliers here that are in the middle of nowhere relative to our connected network. And that's just something that we do. You know, part of the, I guess we have this feeling like we can just do that because we didn't start that long ago, and we had to start somewhere, and we started here, but then we just started other routes. And hey, if we can connect the routes in, awesome, it helps. But we'll start a route anywhere with the understanding that we might have to bid a route a little bit more money because there's going to be more transportation costs with getting planes around and so on. But that's okay. And we also, hope, especially with the growth that we've had, we hope to grow our network because then it does make it more efficient and easier to operate. Yeah, that's it. We've got a lot of people. We've got about 150 pilots, and as I said, about 26 airplanes. So, and we do, one other thing on here. Right now, we've got major maintenance centers in Denver and Dallas, but we are exploring and planning on making one over in this region as well.
Are your pilots on your payroll or are they contracted?
Every person who works at Boutique Air is an employee.
You're showing Minneapolis route.
Mm-hmm.
Throwing mud against the wall is what I like to do. Is there any chance of saying Minneapolis to Manistee, Manistee to Chicago, something along those lines? And the follow-up question to that is do you only have one type of aircraft?
Sure. So Minneapolis, and Brian, maybe you can weigh in here for a minute. So good question, or good couple questions there. So the Minneapolis question, one of the things that Barry was mentioning earlier is that, what makes all this possible is money from the DOT, and the whole reason for that is without the money from the DOT, it wouldn't be a commercially viable service, right? That's the whole idea. So the challenge with Minneapolis, if I'm not mistaken, is that it's significantly further than Chicago. And with every additional mile that you're flying, there's more costs because you're just bringing more fuel and more hours in the engine, more maintenance, so on. So in light of the fact that it would be more, and the DOT not necessarily being excited about paying more, I would say it's probably challenging. I don't know how much further is it, do you know?
It's completely doable in the PC-12. It's just over 300 nautical miles. So,
what's the distance between here and Chicago O'Hare?
156. So it's almost twice the distance.
Okay. So then, yeah. So it'd be tricky. Yeah, we could do it, but it'd be tricky financially. On the aircraft side, we do have another airplane. It's the King Air 350. It is a twin-engine plane, and it's a good plane. It's still in production. It is significantly more expensive to operate. So, our bid is more than what I think the community is getting right now. And so putting in a King Air is only going to push that up higher and make the DOT less happy. We've had I would say it's good to okay experience with the King Air. Like it's fine, but overall, the Pilatus we have seen to be a great success in communities. And like I said, being a single engine plane, it just, some people might be kind of weirded out by that initially, but categorically, after a few weeks, everyone in the community is very excited about it, pretty much. I mean, there might be like one person out of 100 that is skeptical. And I can show you, we'll run through some numbers on that. So, sure.
Your positive comments talk about the Los Angeles to Vegas route, but you don't have that on your route map.
So, yes. You mean in our positive comments in our bid? Okay, we need to get rid of it. So, can I get that other one up here again? Okay, so we put in a bid over here that was a couple trips to Oakland, a couple trips to LA, and this is Merced, California. And we also had a trip to Vegas, which is right around here. And that was extremely popular. But the Vegas airport, airports are all different. In this case, Vegas was very unfriendly to us. And they're not supposed to be that way. And the reason is because they take, who pays for the Vegas airport? You do, I do, we all do. And therefore, because they take federal funds, they're supposed to let all businesses come in there on a fairly equal basis. Well, they didn't. They were being very, they priced things in a way that made it very difficult for us to do that. So we had to stop our service despite the fact that it was extremely popular with the people in Merced. So. All right, so coming here, to Manistee, so we put in a bid, and we put in a bid we think is, it fits well with the historical traffic, and it fits also with the seasonality. So you may not have seen this, but we did, I'm not sure where we noted it in there, but we definitely put it in where the plan, if I'm not mistaken, was right now there are lower numbers of passengers in November. Is it November, December, January? Is that right? So we were
More
planning,
January, February, March, April, but
okay. Well, we can run
But,
through
yeah,
it
but-
anyway. So we had a few months where we were planning on doing just 2 round trips because there isn't, with the total number of passengers historically are traveling in those months, we're just going to have a lot of empty seats. So that was the plan for a few months there. Save some money, right? With fewer round trips, you're just going to save some of those DOT dollars. And then the rest of the year, we were going to do 3 round trips, except for June and July, I believe it was. Is that right?
July, August, I think is your heaven period.
No.
I mean, July and August are our peak
Oh,
months.
July. Okay.
But yes.
So July and August, significantly more traffic, right? So that's when we were planning on bumping up to 5 round trips a day instead of 3, because that would help handle that surge. So that's kind of our plan. And the thing about O'Hare is it is a little constrained there, but there is a place for us to go. It's in what terminal is it in? It's in F?
L Concourse.
L, okay. Yeah. So sometimes our competitors will certain people may mention, oh, they can't come in there. We're there, but no one else can come there. Well, if you look at the schedule, and the airport's stance on this is, if there's space at the times you want to come, that's fine. Hopefully everyone can play nice. Well, competitors don't always like to play nice, but we've done the analysis and we can share that if it gets to that point. But there's plenty of room and space there. And Cape Air, for example, is going to be going in there soon, taking over for these flights for Air Choice 1. But it's just, competitors like to talk crap about each other sometimes. So anyway, so that's our plan.
A question on that is, again, your proposal doesn't have the details of that seasonality shift that I saw anywhere in the proposal. My concern would be is, since it's not in the proposal, the DOT is not going to necessarily allow that switching without.
Is it not in there?
We didn't put the detailed stuff about seasonality for those 2 months.
Right.
I think for a couple of reasons, one of which is your flexibility on how much you surge during those 2 months can be limited with EAS. And if we were to do it, I think we'd structure it as a high season, low season. I don't think it would be a problem with.
We can check in if that's a concern.
It would be a concern because, again, I could see DOT saying, oh, this is an 18-weekly proposal, and they're going to establish in the billing system 18 per week is the cap, and then when you get around to it, they're like, no, that's not part of your proposal. We can't pay for more than 18 a week.
Right. Well, the way that I think that we worked on that was that you did put in the extra round trips.
Not specified specifically.
Sure. But we had the right number worked out, And
The
and so
number is that, I mean, the only thing that is mentioned in there is 872
Right.
yearly departures.
Right.
It doesn't mention any daily, any weekly.
Right.
And I'm just concerned that sometimes DOT gets blinders on and pigeonholes you into something, and it's like, well, that's not what we intended, but you didn't say that, so
Right.
therefore we're not going to allow it.
Yeah.
I agree with you 100% on that, because if it's not on the paper, it's not gonna happen.
Well, the thing I will say about that is the DOT, so I'll talk to Kevin about that, he's the head of the DOT program. But so long as the number is agreed upon, like, it's not like we're saying, hey,
Right.
you know,
Yes.
it's this amount, but then we also need more. You know, so long as that number, and we say, hey, we want to spread it out in this way to be more effective, they actually want that too, right?
I would hope so.
Yeah, no,
but
they do.
I've
They definitely
had other experiences where they get hung up on things.
So when we've dealt with seasonality before with the DOT. We've got, you know, with Shovo and other places. So I can talk to them about that and confirm that that would be okay.
At 5 flights a day during peak period, does that meet our projected capacity?
It wouldn't.
That's enough. Thank you.
Well, that was kind of my
Well,
question.
I mean,
too. It's like,
again,
how many
our-
flights to get to the goal that we want, because we want to, right now, we want to grow that significantly.
Yeah. Well, it does. I will say it does meet it does meet your historical numbers. Does it get you to where you
well,
want to be?
It does on an average basis, so if you average the month together, but on a Tuesday and Wednesday and Saturday versus Thursday, Friday, Sunday, Monday, we've got significant swings where 9 times 5, 54, you know, there were probably, I don't know, 10 days last summer that we did more passengers on some of those days than 5 flights would allow.
So the other thing is,
So, you know, there's...
on a weekly basis. So when the DOT says, okay, you want to do 5, they do things on a weekly basis, right? So what we would say to them is, okay, we want to do, so 3 round trips is 18 round trips a week, right?
Yep.
We're doing 18 a week most of the year, but during these
And
weeks.
just for the board,
Sure.
you think 3 times 7 is 21, not 18.
Right.
But in DOT, their view is that you traditionally have less on the weekends than you do in the week because everyone's a business traveler and travels Monday through Friday. Our experience is that Sunday is our peak day,
Sure.
but Saturday isn't. So there's some rationale that makes sense. But again, in DOT world, 18 is 3 per day.
Just because, you know, this is what we do, and you may have less experience with the traditional program as of late, right? But we actually have the ability to spread the round trips. We could fly them all on Sunday if we want. The DOT doesn't care. So if you're saying, hey, Tuesdays and Wednesdays are no good, we can shift those flights to other days that are heavier. So we have 7 or 8 round trips in a single day.
But
we're able to do that.
and I'm glad you're going there because that's where I wanted, because you're answering things the way I would hope you would, but I see at some point a single crew and a single airplane can only operate so many hours a day.
During those times, we have 2 planes. We have to have 2
So,
planes.
and does your basically proposal allow you, have you baked in enough dollars to do something like that
There's no way we can do 5 round trips a day
with
one
one
plane.
aircraft? So
You're
you've
planning
already,
on 2.
so going for 5 on those 2 months already says you've got the equipment and the crews to do more than what you could do with just 1 aircraft.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
That's the
So
plan.
that's-
For those months, we'd have 2 planes going.
Or would you be able to upsize your plane and cut down on trips?
Well, that would
I'll
be
let you
nice.
answer that one.
Well, the answer to that is not really, and the reason is because once you get over 9 seats, and that's why these other companies, well, Great Lakes is 30 passengers, but there are major pilot shortages, most of you probably know. And once you cross over that number, then the pilot requirements are the same for flying a 737, and that's why a lot of companies are having challenges right now. We're immune from those problems, more or less. So if we upgauge our plane, I mean, could we do that? Sure. But it also changes the type of certificate that we have from what's called a 135 right now to 121. And that's a pretty significant, I mean, there's quite a bit that goes with that. So it's not as simple as just buying a plane and,
And I like history, so back in 1997, prior to 97, you could operate 19-seat aircraft under 135. Congress changed the rules, and in 1997, the number of airports in the Essential Air Service program doubled approximately that year, because the cost structure of all airlines that were trying to provide service to small airports went up overnight. We started becoming an EAS subsidized airport at that time period after that change in regulations. There is rumors that with the current administration that they might be looking at backing away from that, which would help a lot of small airports from both a pilot shortage standpoint as well as having aircraft flexibility to meet their needs. But that's not where we are today.
One of our, well, in perception isn't necessarily reality, but I don't know how big a factor that'd be here to have a single engine airplane flying across the lake. Maybe most folks wouldn't think it's a beautiful plane. It looks like an executive plane, with seats and stuff. That looks very nice. I'm just wondering how many people are nervous by having only one engine.
sure. Well, there are legal things around that, actually. So in terms of the single engine, we've got much more data, or there's more information on some of that, so I'll get to that.
Yeah, the other question I had too, or comment, and I guess it's been discussed a little, is that we do want to grow the number of enplanements. And so we've been looking at twin engine with larger seats too. And so, but sounds like you would address it by having more flights in order to deal with the growth, especially on those peak times.
Yes, and that's one of the advantages that you have with a small plane, is that we can add in more frequencies. If you have a bigger plane, you're locked in at 12 round trips a week. That's it. And if you've got a 50-passenger jet, that could be okay. But still, there's a lot of waste because you are flying this big plane on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. You've got pretty much 2 round trips a day is probably what, and those companies, when you get to a big company like SkyWest or United, etc., they don't really mess around with okay, we're going to do 5 trips on Wednesdays and 1 trip on Tuesdays, or they're just like, okay, they have to be really regimented about that stuff. We're a little, we're smaller, more nimble, so we can shift things around a little bit more.
That's great.
But while we've got the picture of the lake up here, and Brian, this is maybe a little more your area, but in essence, what we have to be able to do is hit land from where our altitude is at, right? So we can, with I think minimal to no getting off the course of the straight line, be within the distance of land and the gliding distance. The plane, the PC-12 at altitude will glide for 60 miles, I believe.
16 to 1 glide ratio.
Yeah, 16 to 1. So, we take off from here, and you're not always taking off exactly the direction you want to go anyway, so sometimes, you're going to veer somewhere and then head over, and in essence, we can fly the straight line while still following the regulations. If we were going to fly, to like Cuba or something, that doesn't, well, actually Cuba might work too, because it's so close. Okay, fly to the UK, right? So anyway, a twin engine, there's just different requirements there, but we have to be able to hit some piece of land from where we're going to glide from, and we can do that, so there's not really an issue
So they can get high enough. They can get high enough that that's not an issue.
Because they're pressurized equipment.
Yeah, right. Now, right, Cape Air
Cape Air would have a different
flies
issue.
piston planes that are unpressurized and only fly at 10,000 feet. Our planes fly up to 30,000. Typically, we're cruising between 22, 25,000 feet. So it's not a problem.
What's the flying time? What's
Flight
it baked
time?
in at? If you go straight, because all our flights go around the lake. None of them cross the lake at this point.
Really?
ATC tends to,
They
into
may-
Midway, tends to route people around the lake anyway, just to
Okay.
come in right.
Okay.
O'Hare is a different beast because,
Sure.
but
Sure. Flight time, do you have flight time?
It's 60, 70 so block minutes for the trip.
So if the flight time is going to be significantly shorter, but when you add in all the airport time. All right. So,
the good stuff.
yeah.
The one thing I was going to add to the comments on concerns over being over water with one engine, Sean mentioned earlier, the safety record of the PC-12. It's never had an engine-rated or engine-related fatality in service as a 135 operation, so it's a very, very safe aircraft. I think the only 135 fatality they've had in the PC-12 is somebody walked into a prop on the ground while it was turning, so that's... Yeah.
Great.
Leave them on.
It was not us.
One too many grams.
Yeah. So,
How many years has that plane been in
90.
since 95,
95?
yeah.
But it's still in production, so
yeah,
even though
it's
that's
very-
a
it's
while
one of the most
ago,
popular
it
planes
is.
around. So, this is exciting. After 3 years of building our company pretty significantly, we started a conversation with United. Turns out they were really waiting for our call and excited to work with us. And so we kind of started off a partnership with them in the last 6-8 months with an interline, which is the sort of more the beginner stage of a partnership, or I should say it's like the, it's the first level. If there are 2 levels, it's level 1. But they've always been interested in this, and we have actually completed the second level of partnership. We haven't really officially announced it because we're in the implementation stages, but we are doing a code share with United. So that we're implementing that currently, and so what that means is United is putting their flight numbers and so on our plane. Our plane remains our plane. We're not like changing our brand or anything like that. But in terms of showing up on United.com and so on, if someone says, "Hey, I want to fly from Dallas to Manistee," it shows up on United where you can get to Manistee, and that's a key differentiating factor that you don't have right now. And in fact, even without codeshare, you have that right now. If we were flying here, it would show up because of the current partnership we have with them, which is interline, but we're taking it up to the codeshare level. And that means that people can use their miles. It means that they get miles when they fly with TCare. They get United miles when they fly with us too. So this is exciting, and it's also the reason it happened, at least in part, is because United sees in us a quality airline that we see in ourselves too. So that's that. Brian, I don't know. Brian's worked on this quite a bit. Anything to add there?
No, there's, I guess one thing, Sean mentioned, we've been relatively immune from the pilot shortage. Everybody knows it's out there. I'd urge you, as you evaluate your bids, make sure that that's something that these other carriers address. One of our tools to ensure that we continue to not have a problem will come with this code share, and it's a partnership with our pilots down the road, having employment opportunities at United. So every single one of our pilots is excited about us. It's going to decrease the churn rate of pilots and keep them around longer. So,
All right.
Are you folks looking at possibly trying to do the same thing with any of the other majors?
Yes. So American, we're also in conversation with them. Codeshare, interline is pretty easy in terms of just getting it done. But codeshare is really like a real deep partnership, and so that's something that United wants exclusivity on that, and it makes sense because you don't want to have multiple mileage programs going on. But We are in conversation with American about setting up an interline so that if you searched on American Airlines website, you would also be able to get to Manistee, for example. Delta is not really, they're just their own thing right now. Southwest doesn't partner with anyone at all. So, but American is sort of in the next one that we're likely to be partnering with. So.
I think you're being a little modest there when you say airlines are easier to accomplish.
Yeah.
You're really probably the first company in a long time that's in the 9-seat market that has accomplished getting an airline. Air Choice One of the other bidders, does not have any interlines, and they've struggled with multiple promises unfulfilled along those lines. And I know Jim has struggled. That's not as easy as I think you made it sound there.
Yeah, they're typically not interested in companies like with the 9-seat airplanes, but again, having just high quality airplanes, good pilots, just good record, good technology, all these things go into their decision making in terms of being willing to do this. It is a big deal. It was a big deal for us, but and America, but once now that we have this with United, it's Americans more interested too. So it's and the bigger our network becomes, the more attractive we are to these other airlines. So. All right, so on the fees, no fees. So next slide. But we don't have fees right now. Maybe someday. Sometimes people try and take advantage of this. They say, "Oh, I'm going to move my whole house in your plane," and they show up with like a big garage full of stuff. So our planes are good at carrying lots of stuff, but we say 50 pounds per person. Really, it can be more, and typically it's more because most people aren't traveling 50 pounds. 50 pounds is a lot. If you try and lift a 50-pound bag, you're like, oh my God, this is so heavy, I can't lift it. So generally, you're fine, and it's very unusual that we have space problems or luggage issues with space or weight. Once in a while it does happen, and we will just put people's bags on the next flight. Usually there's not an issue. We always work things out.
What about odd size baggage? For us, golf clubs are a big thing in the summer, and while not as much, skis in the winter.
Generally we can fit everything in. If there's 8 guys that show up all have golf clubs, that's a little bit more of a challenge. We typically can get things there just by saying, okay, we'll get these things here now, and then we'll send this on the next flight. But yeah, usually we don't have a problem. If there is a significant challenge, for example, if there was tons of this stuff, that's where we might consider a King Air. And we do have these King Airs. They have more space and are able to accommodate that more. So we did that a little bit in a community called Cortez in Colorado. There's a lot of skiing around there, and we used those King Airs to help with that. So, like I said, if that was a real ongoing issue, we do have the ability to bring King Airs in. Just more about fees here. So, we've put a lot of energy and money, effort into our website, and dogs are free. So one cool thing, and it's unusual for a company our size, is that you can cancel your flight online, or you can change your flight online. So that's not, and we try and make it easy. You're able to do that, legally and so on, and you could buy a refundable ticket, non-refundable ticket, but you can do that online easily, right? We're not trying to hide that from you, trying to make it easy, because then you're not calling us, and we will still talk to you, of course, if you want to call us, and we're happy to talk to people. We've got great phone coverage, but technology, of course, in this day and age is really important to work on everyone's phones and so on. So
related to this slide is, let's say because you've got such great fares, you're going down to O'Hare, and you want to go to Denver, and Frontier is got crazy low fares too. But then there's, on the return, Frontier's delayed 2 hours and there's a misconnect. How do you handle misconnections, things that aren't the fault of the passenger, and they've got a non-refundable ticket and they've now just...
For us, we always let them get the next flight for no charge.
Because your policies online in that area don't say that as clearly as I think they maybe should then.
Okay, yeah, I mean, that's absolutely, we never, if someone misses a flight, we just get them on the next flight.
What about the outbound?
Exactly.
We're delayed here and they're gonna misconnect in Chicago.
Yes.
So well, the nice thing is with United, you're covered, right? With that interline. So that's a big deal. And that's something that I guess our Great Lakes has interline. I think,
Yes,
too.
they do.
Anyway, but we actually we really try and get things worked out for people. The secret really is to not do that, right? To be reliable and to be on time so people aren't missing stuff. That doesn't always happen, of course.
And it can be weather, it can be other
weather,
things that
right,
cause
sure.
those
Generally,
delays.
we will actually offer some money to help compensate people when we cause them to have other travel difficulties, which is not, we don't have to do that, we just do, right? So if you say, okay, I missed my other flight, it cost me more money, right now, I mean, sometimes we'll make exceptions to it, but right now we do have a credit, like automatic, $150 towards travel inconvenience costs. So.
Is there any positives or negatives with the aircraft, weather-related, different from some of the other proposals? Is there any advantages to this aircraft in a similar weather situation? Because it's newer technology that might make it more efficient from a timeliness or a less downtime?
So one thing, and Doug's on the phone, but one thing we do is we have GPS on our planes. I'm not sure, I think that Great Lakes planes don't have GPS. Maybe they do. The 1900Ds I don't think did. That's certainly a benefit. But we also, all of our planes, we put weather radar, which is great. I don't think our competitors do that. It's not a super expensive thing, but all our planes have 2 iPads that are 4G, and then we also have a weather radar thing. So we're able to see in real time, basically, all the weather, and that helps us. Additionally, our planes are small and easy to go into other alternate airports. So if there was a big backup at, say, Chicago or O'Hare, we can easily just go into some other airport and do ground transportation to get people where they need to go to. That sort of thing is not going to probably happen with larger carriers. I'm not sure how Air Choice One and Great Lakes deal with this stuff, but we do whatever it takes to get flights, to get things going. So, but yeah, that's pretty much all I can say about it. There's nothing, it's not like we can't. The plane doesn't change the weather or anything like that.
No.
De-icing, no change, weather related. I mean, there's nothing new on the planes.
We've got boots for the leading edges of the wings, the horizontal stabilizer, they work great.
Yeah, I mean, it's just
de-ice.
standard de-ice. I would say it's probably better de-ice than a 402C as well. But that's what Cape Air flies, but they're not bidding, so. But it is made by the Swiss, so, you figure they've got some mountains over there as well.
Barry, does that plane fit in the hangar that we have available or not?
It would fit in Ted Aaron's hangar. So we have a hangar on property
On-site.
that could accommodate that.
It's about 53 feet by 50 feet. So I don't know if there are rental cars here or not.
We have a local dealership that provides rental cars. It is an issue we have because we don't have sufficient cars for our seasonal demand again.
Okay.
So we have Lyft here now also.
You live,
But
you don't
that's
have
good.
drivers.
But there are no drivers. But
I
yes,
misled.
theoretically, the service is
Yeah.
here.
That traverse move.
The app works here. Okay. Well, there've been a couple communities that didn't have any cars at all, and so we did start a little boutique car program. So if that's an issue, sometimes we'll have a few rental cars available just because it makes things better. So that's.
No, it is an issue. It's something this board has discussed for a number of years, where it's another one of those factors that is limiting our growth,
Mm-hmm.
that
Sure.
we just don't have capacity in the summer to handle
And
that.
our current, we have a separate car reservation system that we've rented from this technology company. And it's fine, but it's not currently connected to the travel agencies, so Expedia, Kayak, etc. And we could get it connected. There's another system that the GDS companies would prefer, and so that if we did have cars here, they would show up on Expedia, on the travel agency. So we're considering moving our reservation system to that, which would make things better.
Actually, you touched on something there that maybe is implied, but not. Are you on all the GDSs?
Right. We're on all the GDSs.
Obviously, through United, you get
So-
some of those things, but I was just curious
Yeah.
if you're independently on all the GDSs.
So our
or not.
reservation system is connected to, there are 3 GDSs in the world. These are companies that connect all the travel agencies, whether they're small or big or online or offline, to an airline reservation system. So Travelport, Sabre, and Amadeus, and we're connected to all of them.
And then, are you then also available on all the OTAs?
Yep, yep.
And OTA, online travel,
Agencies.
something,
Yeah.
basically Travelocity, the things that the consumers would go to versus a travel agent. Oh. I guess I asked that question one slide
Right.
too soon.
So, yeah. Next slide. So marketing, typically we're spending about $20,000. That's what we've got budgeted roughly. And sometimes we spend a little more, sometimes a little less. But we have email blasts that we're doing to customers. We've got social media and so on. So, and we'll also take out ads in the newspaper and try different things. And we'll open suggestions.
How do you do marketing in 30 different markets across the country? How much partnering do you do with the local community, since you don't have a obvious great knowledge of every community you're operating in?
Well, honestly, the best, it's going to sound cheesy, but the best is just by having good service, people talk, and we become popular because of that. And I'll show you how that works, but that doesn't mean that we don't do marketing. I mean, usually the standard is we'll do email and also newspaper. Those seem to work the best for us.
One of the reasons I ask is because of going through alternate,
Mm-hmm.
we've really taken and built up the marketing for the airport and airline kind of in-house. That's why Brandon's here, and I think there's good opportunities to, based on the knowledge we have, to work with you. Currently, for example, we really pool resources with the airline and kind of work on one marketing program with pooled resources.
Yeah, I remember we talked about that a little bit on the phone too, so we can try some different online things. So, yeah, this is just some things that we've done on marketing. Sometimes we'll put up billboards too. Just depends on the location. More social media.
If I'm going too fast, just.
Yeah, it's fine. And we'll do like a ribbon cutting ceremony. So these are just some reviews. You can look us up. And one of the things, I mean, most of our reviews are really positive. It can be kind of polarizing because if you fly with boutique air and everything goes fine, it's great. Everyone loves it. And they really like it. It's not just like, it was fine. Most people are like, that was awesome. And part of the reason is because the plane, people just love these planes. It feels like private plane. if on the other hand there's any sort of problem, then people hate it. As you know, everyone has strong feelings about aviation airlines. One area that where it's not that we are problem free, and we do tend to have a little bit more challenges in places that are further away, but kind of having more experience with that in the last year or so, we're working on changing some of the way that we do things to have more airplanes in an area that helps us recover from, say, a maintenance issue. So that's something I'm very excited to be working on the next few months, is kind of changing how we're doing things to increase our reliability all across the network.
To that point, you operate in Thief River Falls and have now, I think, for probably 2 years, since I think that's
Yep.
coming up for
Yep.
renewal. What has your completion rate been?
We
In
need to
that
keep
case,
going.
I should just stop asking questions.
Yeah, we've got a lot of data slides that hopefully we can get through it pretty quick. Yeah, so here's some of the numbers that are really good to see. So this was our first route. Here was the previous airline, which was, I believe this was Great Lakes, yeah, Great Lakes. So after we started, a lot of passenger growth. So this is a slide, this type of trend is something that's occurred in almost everywhere we've gone, or I should say everywhere we've gone. You can go to the next one. So Silver City, another community we started, it's a previous airline, here's us. And we can just, next one, there's a lot of slides. This is Greenville, this is Silver, this is another airline called Seaport. They definitely did not have a very good time doing that. And then this is what happened when we started. For this community, for Manistee, I don't think it's not, these were seriously problematic. And I think the situation here is good, like things are good. So I would expect us to be definitely like at the same level, but continuing to grow. And the interline helps with that.
Were these 9-passenger to 9-passenger planes, or were they bigger planes before and you went to a 9-passenger?
This was actually a bigger plane. This is a 30-passenger plane. This is a 9-passenger plane. But it doesn't matter how many passengers you have if your service sucks. No one uses it. So we've had in these other in the previous slides that we're looking at, these were bigger planes. Those are 19-seat planes with interline, actually. So they had these partnerships, and it's still, but if you don't do a good job, you don't do a good job. So this is, Merced. We've had, a lot of growth there.
Is January usually the biggest problem month or something, or why do you have just January information?
Year and year. Showing the whole year.
Yeah, it's a year.
That's a year's stuff there.
Oh, it is,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, this is January to January, and then this is actually 2 years of data, basically.
Okay.
11 through 17.
Yeah.
So in your, you find if we're with your company and you find that flights are selling out and you've got a demand, you've got, I couldn't fit this many into this flight, I couldn't. I mean, it's overwhelming. If that happened, would you come back to Barry or us and say, we need to modify this a little bit? We're not seeing there's no value in these days flying, or these days we've got an aircraft that's going out with 2 and 4 seats, but we're getting demand over here that none of us anticipated, so we can flex that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. We do that all the time. Because it's better for us too, right? We say, hey, typically Tuesdays and Wednesdays are slow. And so what we'll do is we'll take frequencies from those days and apply them on Sundays and Fridays or Thursdays. So yeah, for sure.
Well, you saw a glimpse of what happened with us at Frontier for a 10-month period.
Right. Yeah. We have, one thing we're good at is looking at data and using that to be more successful. So, sure. We're talking about reliability. Generally, we're operating in the 97, 98, 99% reliable. So, then once in a while, things will we'll have a problem with, bad luck or what have you. But we have, and like right now, we're gonna just keep growing the number of airplanes we have, and it helps us have more options when we do run into problems. When we have problems, it's almost always a maintenance issue. We don't have a pilot shortage, we don't have technology problems, we don't have customer service problems, really. I mean, it's just like, oh, the plane had something on it break, so now it's grounded until we come up with a new airplane to send, or we fix it. Those are really the options. I mean, we have to fix it regardless, it's just a matter of how quickly. So,
What's the average age of your planes then?
so our planes are typically, almost all of them, or maybe all of them, are 2002 to 2007. And there's a reason for that, which is that they changed the plane significantly, the avionics system, they've changed it significantly in 2008. And it's fine, but a lot of pilots don't like it. And it's a much more complicated system to learn. And so we sort of just said, we're gonna focus on this plane. And they have it's sort of like I don't know, the way I describe it is like having a Toyota Camry or like a Ford something Focus from like 2008. You're kind of stuck with what's there potentially. But older cars, you could pull out stereo systems and upgrade them. So this is a more integrated system. You can't do much to it with the newer style. And the old ones, ironically, we can put in brand new equipment, but the new one, you can't. It's all one thing, but it's all from 2008 because they also don't change it. So there's nothing really wrong with it. It's just that's kind of the way it is. So, but to answer your question, mid 2000s is typically where we're at. But we're upgrading the equipment inside all the time. So
One of the issues that we've had sometimes is the ability to handle handicapped passengers.
Mm.
So how do you deal with that?
So for the type of planes that we have, the way that it works is that someone has to be able to power themselves up the steps and get into the plane. There's only 3 steps, but we don't have, if it was like United or SkyWest with a 50-passenger plane, they might have other ways of doing that. But that's kind of, there's a bunch of, if it was like the issue of the community, we could work on it. But there's certain liability that goes with helping, doing that whole part of it, and that's something we have not gone beyond that point. I think that's probably how Air Choice 1, and I'm not sure about Great Lakes, I'm not sure.
What about their equipment? Do you have the capacity or capability to take a motorized wheelchair as an example?
If it, I don't know.
Motorized wheelchair would be tough. We don't,
They
the
don't
car
fit on
capacity in the back
jet
only
streams.
holds 400 pounds of
They don't
stuff.
go on a jet stream.
Well, just,
Yeah.
But going back, when Great Lakes was here with the 1900, we more than once loaded motorized wheelchairs into the cargo hold of that. And it was almost like a community event, because we had the EMS out here and everybody else, because
that's why I brought the question up.
I know.
Yeah, it's probably not the easiest thing to do. I'd say it's not our forte to do. Getting someone who has it's a regular, someone, if we can wheel someone up to a regular wheelchair and they can make it up a couple steps, great. We regularly are arranging wheelchairs to pick people up in Denver and other places. But if someone needs special things, it's going to be harder for us. Okay, so this is our overall reliability, and then this includes weather cancellations. This is, if we take weather out, we're at 98.4% since for the past 3 or 4 years, and 67,000 flights.
So let me ask then specifically, Thief River Falls, because northern snow, cold, all things that are hard on any aircraft. Do you see similar performance even in the more extreme condition airports?
Mm-hmm. And we fly in Denver is one of our big stops too, so there's plenty of snow here. As far as our bids, we try and just remain financially responsible, and this is our revenue growth over time that just correlates with our popularity. So, but we also own our airplanes. They are financed, we have loans, but we're not leasing our planes. There's no one who's going to come and scoop them up. So that's good. Here we've just got some references that are always good to call. It's good to, and you can talk to anyone, and we're not perfect, but we've delivered, I'd say, pretty well to all the communities that we've signed up for. More names, and we're better looking than everyone else. Maybe not me, but anyway, we have a great group of employees, and we have a lot of pilots that are excited to move on to other bigger airlines. It's a great place for people to gain experience before they go and fly 747s and so on. So that's probably it, I think. Any other questions?
Looking at my list here, and yes, I've got a few more. So, what is the cabin height? It's hard to gauge from a picture.
Sure.
And while we have Pilatus in here, I've never actually stepped inside one before. Because
it's probably around 5 something feet. It's not. I mean, it's not. It's fine. I mean, I guess what I would say is it works for people.
Compared to a King Air, that's kind of the
It's going to be similar to a King Air. Yeah.
Okay.
The King Air and the Pilatus are very similar. I mean, people can be. I guess if you're worried about the plane, it's good to think of the graphs where here we're taking over from airlines that have bigger planes, and we're doubling and tripling the traffic, right? They have bigger planes and interline and so on. And so it's really, it can't be that bad if we're doubling passenger traffic.
But at the same time, as you said, those environments there were issues that were significantly hindering things. In many ways, things here have been stable, growing with aircraft that are either 19 or 30 seat. So in some ways, this is going from an environment that's operating well,
sure,
and that's a negative. Interline, obviously, other things, balance that, and it's ultimately this board's decision is to figure out where those balancing factors are.
Well, if you got into a plane and you felt like it's a tin can that's about to fall out of the sky, that's going to make people nervous. And that's
regardless of how big it is.
Yeah, exactly, sure. And our planes, I will say, people like that. People really feel like, oh, this is a nice experience. These seats are comfortable. They recline. They swivel around. You feel off. You're like, that was nice. That's what generally people feel, including myself. People pay a lot of money to fly around in these planes. Executives. It's sort of like a business jet.
Did we have a slide or anywhere information on ticket price points?
That's one of my questions.
And that was my first question. The second question is there any opportunity to see one of these aircrafts here before this decision is made?
It's possible that we could bring one. We didn't come here in one, unfortunately. We thought about it, but we just decided to fly commercially, which meant flying and then driving.
Through a lot of snow, probably.
Yeah. Anyway.
So back to the question.
So on the pricing, when was our average price that we put in?
So looking at the current fares, you guys are in the 64 to 124 or so range. So we modeled our bid on a $75 average ticket price.
Which means we'd probably be starting fares, you know, sometimes we'll have an initial period of 3 months, 6 months, a year, where we keep prices a little bit lower, maybe $59, $49, $55, you know, where we've got them starting in that range. Generally, we have some tickets available at a cheaper price, and then it goes up, okay, these first X number of tickets on the flight are sold, the next few tickets are gonna be $79, and then there's a couple tickets that are like $99 or $110 or whatever the case is. So we have that's typically how we work it, where if you've got bargain hunters, okay, they can fly on a Tuesday instead of a Friday and save some money. Or you've got someone who's just like, I need to fly, there's only one seat, it's $100, that's fine, right? And then, so it caters to people and the different price sensitivity that people have.
Yeah, the connectivity is gonna change that. I mean, there's gonna be, you know, obviously there'll be a section that flies to Chicago, but the majority are gonna be flying through.
Mm-hmm, for sure. And so with the interline, or sorry, with the code share with United, that's where they actually take control of the pricing and do this very complicated thing. It's nothing specific to us. It's what they do with other partners, where we suddenly get a percentage of the fare, which means we might only get $29, but then other times maybe we'll get, you know, $150.
So actually, in my conversations with SkyWest, where I was drilling into some of these same issues, they were indicating that because O'Hare is such a competitive airport right now, it seems to be where all the low-cost carriers have migrated to down in Chicago, and now United American with their kind of limited ticket pricing categories, you know, the sub-economy fares that they're doing, that SkyWest was saying that often it will end up being less expensive just to take the local segment fare, combining it with what that fare would be, and United will still pick that up even if they've priced that market through the code share at something, you know, $150 higher. Is that your anticipation too, or will United be solely driving the pricing on those connections?
So if you buy a ticket from here to O'Hare on boutique air, it's just, we have total control over that pricing. The only time United gets involved is if you're booking on United, going to some third-party location, right? Or so, just a different place, you're carrying on. But there's nothing to prevent anyone from buying a $59 or $79 ticket on boutique air and then buying a separate ticket on
Right, but if I go
Southwest.
through United's booking site, will they still pick up your fare base for that first segment and combine it with the other,
No.
even though it's a...
They have their own.
SkyWest told me the opposite,
Okay.
so I'm just curious as to...
So right now,
That's kind of, because
Right.
United could potentially price us from a connection out of the market.
They could, but it's not to their algorithms are based on distance, generally, right? So.
Because I'll say in Muskegon,
Mhm.
they're always complaining that Grand Rapids gets much better pricing, even though they're only 40 minutes apart. That's a very big concern as to how that mechanism of those connecting fares through a code, because
So
in
right-
the interline
you know-
world, you don't have that issue,
Yeah.
but once you become a code share, now United steps in and does more of the pricing.
Well, the thing is, you can always buy a boutique air ticket, right? Interline, you always have that ability, right?
Mhm.
So that's not going away. So with Interline, it actually only opens things up more because you can you can buy a boutique air ticket and then you can buy a United ticket if that's going to be better for you. It's
But if there are two
unlikely-
tickets, the interline doesn't apply anymore, does it?
No, it doesn't. But it doesn't really matter unless you're checking bags.
But if you're connecting, that's kind of the point, is you're checking
Sure.
bags, so...
I mean, but we're talking about real corner cases where there's a terrible price. I mean, I can't predict. I mean, I wish I could say, hey, let me explain to you United's pricing. You know, out of my
Again, Traverse City to the north
Mhm.
has a reputation of being terribly priced by United and American, and Delta to an extent too. What has allowed us to succeed in our niche is being able to draw passengers away from that traditionally very high-priced airport. If United says, oh, we don't want to cannibalize our own passengers out of Traverse City, we're going to make sure that Manistee's priced $20 more than Traverse City, that really would significantly impact our potential growth in the connection market. So I'm just curious as to how.
So what I know, we haven't, because I could probably talk about this more authoritatively if we were already there.
I know.
Right. But, Great Lakes is interlining, so you could look to them as a model.
And again, I was using the conversation I had with SkyWest,
Yeah.
where they alleviated some of my concerns in this area by saying how it works for them. I don't know if it's different for other types of code shares.
It is different because SkyWest is not a code share with United. It's not at all. It's completely different. They do not. SkyWest is a regional, and they have no reservation system themselves, right?
I've got a twist to add to that. And the twist would be, if, as Barry has told us several times, being a, correct me if I'm wrong, stating this, a charter service flying into O'Hare, you have less capacity of getting bumped than if it was a United flagged ship. If that is accurate, would we have the opportunity, if Traverse City gets bumped because it's a United flagged plane, that they could send people here to catch the flight to go to Chicago?
Yes. I would believe
So
that.
that,
Your dispatch is not going to be tied into United slowing down arrivals and
No.
departures
Not at all.
because there's some snow going on in Chicago. Whereas right now, our neighboring airports, their flights get canceled left and right because United's going to cancel the 50-seat but keep the 737s going out of O'Hare.
Not only that, but if we really have to, we can fly into Midway as an alternative, right? We can and will do that.
Right.
Also, to allay your fears a little bit about the interline pricing thing, one thing we could do, if, let's just say, okay, we've got our interline, so on, and it's just a disaster, right? I'm sure there's nothing wrong with the interline itself, but let's just say that the code share pricing that you end up here with somehow ends up being really terrible. One thing we could do is talk to United about it and just say, hey, we would like to exclude Manistee from our code share program and make it interline. That's something we could probably do. We talked about that with them. I'd have to kind of double check on that, but they don't, that could be better all around for them too, because their pricing is algorithmic, and they're not sitting here saying, oh, let's make it $20 cheaper or more expensive in Manistee. They have too many flights, so it's all based on algorithms. And so for some weird reason, I wouldn't expect this, but if it ended up being really bad, we could say to them, let's make this one community, we really need this to be interline, the sum of boutique plus, we could do that.
And the step before that would be actually bringing up the specific issue and seeing if they could address
Right.
it before we
Right.
eliminate the coach.
And they want, peace in the world. So.
Schedule. How much input does the community have in determining best times to fly and the schedule overall? Going into O'Hare, I'm assuming there are some restrictions on the gate end that might put some constraints around, this would be ideal, except gates aren't available in those times. So how do you see that working, or how does that work in your other airports?
We try and come up with a schedule that works well for everyone, that works well for the community. We have pilot time constraints a little bit as well. But generally what we end up with, we've got, during the regular season, there's one airplane, we've got 2 sets of pilots probably during the day, and we're gonna have an early morning flight, generally 6:30 a.m. departure is typical, comes back around maybe 10 or 9:30, somewhere in there. and then leaves again at like 10:30, arrives at, more midday. And then we have a late afternoon flight that comes back in at, say, 4 or 5 p.m. Or actually, I take it back. It comes back, well, we've got 3 round trips, and so we'll go back, and then we have typically a flight that will come back around at maybe like 5 or 6 p.m. or sometimes we could do later. Like, it just depends on the cruise, right? But
So
sometimes we'll have a flight that comes in at 8 p.m.
So I think what I heard you say, this question I should have asked, is it sounds like you plan to operate the route with 2 crews, not trying to squeeze it into 1 crew's duty day. Because you then start, if you get something delayed, now you've got a crew rest issue the following day. I heard you talking about 2 crews, and realistically to accommodate a 6:30 a.m. and a 9 p.m. you have to you have to trim a couple hours off each end to do otherwise. So I'm curious what you bid for what you were thinking. Obviously, peak where you've got multiple airplanes, multiple planes, that gives you a lot more leeway. But in kind of the rest of the year.
Yeah, I mean, it's generally, I would say 6 a.m., 6 something departure. That's what everyone wants, so that you can catch some flights out of Chicago. And then, a flight and then flights during the day, and then the last flight coming in at, 6, 7, 8 p.m., somewhere in that range.
Okay. That's all my questions.
Sure. Okay, great.
Somebody asked about cabin height. It's just under 5 feet on the River Woods.
Okay.
It's 4.8 feet. But the chairs are amazing because not only do they swivel, but they also move out, and you got all the legroom you'd ever need on a plane.
Are there 2 rows or just 1 row? Or
1 row.
One on each side.
One on each side, kind of alternating, I guess.
All right.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
No other questions?
I'm glad you came today, because it
Yes.
gives us all a little different view of probably what we received.
Do you want to go next?
Sure. By all means.
I mean, in some ways, Jim isn't part of the standard proposal, so. But again, I kind of, Oh yeah, actually, Doug, if you're still on the phone, while we're still in the part of the agenda where we're having proposals, is there anything you want to add today about Great Lakes proposal, other than you'd like the opportunity to be here personally and it just didn't work out today?
Sure. No, hey, thanks, Barry. You guys are doing a great job covering a lot of territory. And you are very much a unique situation with your alternate EAS. So, believe it or not, I've got 6 pages of notes. I've been learning a lot. So, a couple of quick things that I do have a 10:30 call that I got to get ready for. But since it was a recent part of your conversation on this pricing issue with United, as you guys know and you experienced, we flew as a United Express carrier into O'Hare for a number of years. One of our greatest frustrations were pricing problem that's experienced in Traverse City and Muskegon. One of the reasons we re-engineered our code-share relationship was we wanted with United, which we still have and have preserved and it's used in Los Angeles and Denver and Phoenix, is we wanted to be able to connect to all connecting seat opportunities at the hubs. And at the time that we were making the transition, it was being actually driven by what Southwest was doing at Midway. We used to see a $155 average fare from Lansing to O'Hare, and after Southwest began to build its presence, we saw our portion of the proration fare drop to $62, and even with full airplanes, we couldn't make any money flying it. So the commentary on not having been a part of your conversation with SkyWest, I'm not exactly certain how they reference it, but for us, this is what we call the sale of the sum of 2 locals. is increasingly replacing a lot of the through pricing conflicts. In other words, if we make a $99 fare available, the way our systems are now set up, we see almost 50% of our traffic that does connect to United sell an interline product that can be done through Expedia or Travelocity or so forth. And the net fare for Great Lakes is greater than it would have been on a pro rate. So that's the reason why the business model was reconfigured. So I could give you a lot of history on that, but if you look back since we did the conversion in 2000 to this model, the pricing problem has actually made what we call the sale to locals more reactive. One of the reasons that we are interested in returning is we certainly watched and observed the success story that Midwest Express had created in Milwaukee. And even today you have 30 nonstop destinations from Milwaukee. Of those 30, 18 of them, actually 19 of the markets have a Southwest pricing environment. So what you see is a great value in the pricing environment being influenced by the Southwest competitive product. And inherently they're not as aggressive, and they're not selling through fares. If you look at their system, they are selling to some of two locals. So, and because I'm a little short on time, I would almost rather turn this into you having the opportunity to ask some questions. Obviously, the program in Milwaukee for us is a far more expansive discussion, primarily because we have folks that have been very aggressive about approaching us to develop a large operation there. And under the circumstances, we appreciate the opportunity to get together and walk you through that. But given them a limited time here, Barry, if you guys got questions I might try to give answers to, go for it here.
I'll turn it over to board members. You've had a chance to look at the Great Lakes proposal. I know there were a couple questions earlier that tied into that. One being the reference in the proposal to Chicago. Another being a reference in the proposal about having spare aircraft. I'm assuming those are things that you'd like to hear about from Doug?
Yeah, so at O'Hare, we've frequently looked at revisiting, especially O'Hare is still very much so dominated by American and United, but as was the case with all the expansion in Midway of Southwest, the pricing environment is great. It's a terrific hub. The facilities for growth at O'Hare are extremely limited. We looked at these L concourse gates on several occasions, and you get moved around. The postage stamp size nature of 1900s and Caravans and Pilatus, you've got some flexibility. The wonderful thing about Milwaukee is the facility was engineered for ground level boarding, and those of you that might have had a reason to utilize the service, the facilities they're high quality, and it will facilitate an easy product and a predictable product. Our presence in O'Hare, we served the market for 18 years, and over the last 5 years of our presence there, we were constantly being squeezed because as the facilities were being remodeled, they were always being engineered for jetways and jets. And the 50-seat jets were taking over today. Now you're seeing really construction modeling that's engineered around 76-seat and larger airplanes being the primary product, and O'Hare never did commit to developing a regional facility. And that was inherent to its history, where United owns its own gates, American owns its own gates. The L Concourse was owned by Delta, a part of a transaction between Delta and O'Hare, they did manage to pick up some gates that they have some control over. So you'll see the Spirits and the Frontiers and so forth working from that area, but they're very limited in what can be done. So we believe that there's some opportunity in certain times of the day. As I think you pointed out, the morning is extremely congested, and finding gate space for a Brazilian would be a problem. We do think there's some windows in the afternoon, and we think we could mix the schedule. We haven't pressured the discussions that we have with United regarding their capability, and quite honestly, because we could come into the hub not only with a potential use of the United code, but the American and Delta interline and United interline agreements would suggest that, you know, there might be an ability to get a gate from Delta, for example, or even American. But our past history on it is it's unpredictable, and we certainly wouldn't want to say with high confidence today. You know, following this conversation, we do expect to talk with United here some more, and by the time we could have the chance to get organized and get together with you, we'll have a lot more clarity to that. But the real focus for Great Lakes is pilot supplies drove the EAS program into the condition it's in today, where alternate EAS arose out of the fact that 121 carriers can't crew airplanes, and the problem continues to get worse and worse. There is a lot of activity going on. Yesterday, we had the acting administrator of the FAA, Dan Elwell, now has the authority. Michael Werder, the previous, he was on a 5-year term, and I think he had 3 years in advance of that where he was functioning as an acting administrator. But we know that politically this problem is going to have to be addressed. But the fundamental problem that's occurred over the last 8 years is just simply fewer pilots in the system. There's over 85,000 fewer pilots in the certified categories of private commercial and ATP. And the rate of acceleration of the problem with retirees, the ratio currently is running 4 retirees for every 1 domestic certificate being issued, which is just speaks to the size and scale and scope of the problem going forward. For us, we believe that fewer pilots mean fewer departures, which means larger airplanes. And Milwaukee, as a hub, has facilities that are running at flight idle. I mean, it's not in a even remotely utilizing the capacity that's available at the airport. So there's a number of markets that, as we would move to a larger airplane than the 1900, which we had historically used in O'Hare and provided most of your history with us, we see a number of other markets in Milwaukee that just simply make sense. So it's a long-term strategy that we're looking at. This is not, our proposal really wasn't some sort of one-off interim business opportunity grab. It has to do with underutilized facilities that still has a lot of pent-up demand, and the success story that was Midwest Express is a classic example of how the business model was already proven out. So I'm sorry I'm getting into a rambling mode here, but hopefully it's helpful here.
Any other questions that anyone would have for Doug while he's...
Are we setting up a time for him to come in?
We will, yes.
Yeah, that was my question, is I know you're more than willing to come down and have a face-to-face with us. This is Brooke Schaefer, the chair of the authority. And as soon as you could do that, the sooner you could do that would be advisable to us.
And also because Air Choice One couldn't be here today, I mean, there's going to be some scheduling gymnastics necessary to get everybody into rooms again. But I think 7 days out would be where I would probably target something, a week from now-ish.
Sure. Now we'll be responsive even if it would take a second. visit. For various reasons, we're going to be spending quite a bit of time independent of just your circumstance in your area over the next few weeks. So
That's all I have.
Okay.
Anybody else?
all right, Barry, if you don't have any other questions, and feel free to follow up, email addresses.
Definitely, I will be following up, yep. Thank you for, staying on and.
You bet. No, appreciate.
I hope those 6 pages of notes are helpful.
All right. All right,
Okay,
well, very good. We appreciate your time.
thank you.
You guys have a good day.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Doug, for reminding me that the phone was there. Yeah, you can just answer that. So, we have Jim, and again, this is where it's a little bit weird, because we as a board, or you as a board, we as an airport and community, need to make multiple decisions here. One is, the easiest thing to do is just to go to DOT and say, we like one of the 3 proposals. So there's this decision point that has to happen, obviously, after we get all the information that says we don't like any of those. We want to, create an alternate proposal. Jim has been working with us for 6 years in that vein, but we could reach out to any of the carriers and, have similar discussions, but we've got 4 weeks to accomplish all that. So, with that kind of preface, you're going to hear some very different types of things, I'm assuming, from Jim. So with that, I will switch around and bring up his presentation.
Yeah, I figured it was good.
What was yours called again? I know aircraft presentation at that.
Maybe that's it. Oh, there it is, yeah.
Is that it?
Yeah, so it'll be more of an introduction to the new board, a little bit of our history, how we got into alternate EAS, what our philosophy was then, the problems we've recognized that have really circumstantial over the past couple of years that are now changing our philosophy and our direction into the future to serve communities like Manistee. We like the growth that we've created along with the community in targeting where your demand is. We don't disagree in a lot of them. We respect boutique very much. We don't disagree in a lot of the aspects of having inner lines is very important. Service reliability is super important. Customer service is super important. And what we're going to demonstrate here really is the options we have as alternate ES, so that you can look at just the options, and the idea that we're recognizing where we enjoyed a couple years of, I'm going to say, just quality service with quietness, and there's been a shift in the way we've partnered with people, and we should address that in this proposal a little bit, and I'll make it as quickly as possible. How's that? So the first slide up here, you'll see that in our ever-changing environment is we determined our original philosophy for bidding, and we were the first ever award of alternate EAS in the country, was, and I started back in 1995, I've been in the industry a long time. We run an FBO and a flight school, and we have our own maintenance and our own avionics shop in Scranton, Pennsylvania. And we've always been in the charter market. So we've flown with the large Apple Vacations, and that was kind of our claim to fame. I know 737s better than I know some of these smaller planes, although now I'm very quickly learning about the smaller planes. So we started back with a Vacation Express and Apple Vacations and junkets with, some of the junkets were the turboprop type of analogy. And what we thought, the first thing that happened to us as a charter operator, we said, well, we should be on the GDS systems. We should be on Expedia, Travelocity, and this is back when they were just evolving, so some of them didn't even exist then, like Cheapo Air and ITA Software with Kayak, who now is part of Google and all that stuff. So we sought out with a project called Project Public Charters, which was to develop our own in-house software to implement and join ARC Corporation and implement with all the GDSs to get a charter airline recognized or a charter certificated carrier recognized on the GDS. No, they've never allowed any charter operator that was not a scheduled carrier onto the GDS prior to public charters in 2008 was the official announcement, but it was like December. And I don't have the Travel Weekly news article where we made the front page up here because I've introduced that in a lot of our proposals. Not knowing that this is a new board, I'm not focusing on a lot of those things. I want to give you a little history. Then you'll get that backfill in the final proposal, but you'll get the good meat and potatoes of the offers here. But I want you to know the philosophy of where we started, where we think we're at now, and where we think we're going. Then you can look at the proposals and hopefully it'll help you make your decision when you get our final proposals in as we tailor them, based on our history here and what we're looking at for the future. So what our philosophy was, we thought it was pretty simple. First, let's get on the GDS as a charter operator. Charter operators typically are known to be very punctual, very corporate oriented, not like the airlines who had been jaded over the years or have gone out of business and resurfaced as another name. So our thought was we'll do the implementation on the sales side and the marketing side with our programming. And then what we'll do is we'll go out and hire a charter operator that is used to provide this high quality corporate service. And that bound together, we'll go out and bid alternate EAS and create a product that is unique. So now the airline, so to speak, if they continue in their corporate mentality, has the same thought process. I got to fly to point A, and then back to B again, or from A to B and back to A again. And they do that with great customer service, good quality planes. And we actually did experience that. We had even ADI, the fiasco of their the demise of the bankruptcy, the quality of their service was phenomenal with a regional jet. It was the idea they went into bankruptcy. I can't help them, I wish we could have anticipated that. Then yes, we had the struggle of taking corporate flight management, who has never flown any type of scheduled service before, and introduced them and got their fitness with them and got their AOSSP so they could fly into the sterile environment. And we hired what we thought at that time was a very high quality corporate operator. And we can all attest that the first 2 to 4 years was very high quality service. We've only seen kind of a change in that structure over the last 2 years when corporate flight decided to get into the scheduled service business themselves, kind of competing against me in some way, and grew exponentially. And we think some of their focus has changed, and some of their quality of their delivery to us has created a change in our mindset of how we're going to do business in the future, and has actually affected some of the product that's been delivered to Manistee. Although I will say, and I do have an overall performance of corporate flight management is now called Contour, that overall they're in several EAS markets. Their on-time performance with their regional jets, they're very diversified, and their even their turboprops is still pretty high. I think we probably, the outlying stations, the customers like me that fly with them in Texas and up here probably have suffered the most because they've put their assets toward their own routes prior to us and reprioritized. So that's why you see this first slide. We, this past year, were awarded our own commuter authority so that we could start operating our own flights under the regional sky. I don't think I have enough in here, but we had 3 DBAs that are registered under this, which is North Country Sky, Regional Sky, and Texas Sky. So we created a brand product, which we call the Sky brand. And then what we allow is the local community kind of to come up with an attachment to that Sky. The Sky logo runs through all of our branded products, and then we allow the communities to find something that will be recognized by the local community so that they can, it's like an affiliated program. So they're part of the Sky team, and North Country Sky was picked for this region. Regional Sky is kind of the parent, overall regional Sky, and then in Texas they just love everything with Texas in it, so they became Texas Sky, okay? So what we've seen is in our original philosophy of hiring these corporate operators, those corporate operators that want to get into scheduled service on an EAS level and put us second, we don't want to operate with. We still see corporate operators that we work with currently today that even though they would like to get into EAS, their still philosophy is flying corporate flights and corporate shuttles. And you'll see that in the next couple slides, not yet though, Barry, and we still will have that alliance with them, but our ultimate goal is to definitely start controlling our own destiny and flying our own flights. And you'll see what our plans are for the near future through this slide presentation. Again, our philosophy is now changing. We want to control our destiny more. It doesn't change the idea that we've recognized that part of our loss in the quietness and the luxury that we had in previous years went away when the airlines started not performing, and then the communications dropped and we had to come up with different ways to our customer service portfolio to be able to communicate with passengers. And it's kind of like this, what do they say, bad information in means bad information out. There's something saying like that, right? So we're kind of subject to that, and we're trying to overcome those things right now, including the reliability of service. And that's what this should give you enough options to evaluate the reliability of service, attached with what we're doing on the customer service level to improve the alternate EAS profile, which really targets the high demand markets of communities like Manistee that have a super high peak and then an off shoulder season that's a little bit lower. So we're very proud that we do have our commuter authority. We're excited we're starting a route from our own local town to Pittsburgh in April. So we should be moving in that direction very quickly, and you'll see some of the assets that we're buying in the future as well. So if you want to hit the next slide. So what happens is we've looked around because since we're not flying these larger turboprops or regional jets ourselves.
And actually, if I could just interrupt, that commuter authority basically allows you to operate 9-seat aircraft like a boutique or an Air Choice One yourself.
That's correct.
Anything more than that is still
alternate EAS,
Part 380
right.
stuff.
Well, we've been probably we were one of the early 380 guys. That's the public charters. That's why we were actually called public charters. When we went to implement, and I don't want to digress too much. I know we all want to get out of here. When we got implemented on the GDS systems, the Travelocities, the Expedias, all of those systems, we knew that we had to divulge to the passenger they were on a public charter, because that was part of the rules and regulations. So we said, well, we just better call ourselves public charters. This way, you can't tell me you bought a public charter ticket and didn't know you were on a public charter. It was a very basic philosophy. That's kind of what we went with. It's probably not a great brand name, but it was really more of, this is how we're going to check this box for the DOT compliance, since we were the first to enter into the GDS as a charter operator. So that kind of gives you the public charter name, and it's still on our certificate, so I can't change it. I can only do DBAs. So what we do is we still are looking at different replacement aircraft and airlines to partner with us. We did enjoy many years with corporate flight management. We think it's kind of interesting because they go for long stunts of period with excellent service, no hiccups, no problems, but then it seems right now, and it's a recurring event, that when they do have their mechanical unreliabilities or irregular operations, their recovery is very, very slow. And that's affecting us all, both the community, the ridership, the customer service side of it. And as much as I've enjoyed a long relationship with them, we think it's probably time we're going to move on. And I still am I'm good friends with the dispatch and everyone, but we've mutually agreed, and that's why they continue to fly in Texas for us until the new bid comes up, and they've also agreed to fly here until we found a transition point that makes sense, even if that's prior to the end of the contract term. So I think they're very agreeable to still working with us because of our relationship and because we're the first one to get them into this industry to begin with of flying EAS routes or scheduled routes. This company is a company we've been working with. It's, you may know them, they're local. They're actually in Milwaukee. It's Freight Runners. They've bailed us out a couple times during some of our irregular operations. They have 3 EMB 120 aircraft similar to Great Lakes. The reason we like them is because they're close to here, and having someone in Nashville compared to someone in Milwaukee, we think we'd have a better quality of operation and backup and support. And they have a very good reputation right now. They have a pretty good sized fleet of 1900s that they fly for cargo. So their support in my visits with them from a maintenance standpoint are good. The references they provided, they fly for a lot of corporate shuttles, and the NCAA are very high, that they're good reliability. The one thing they lack is commuter authority, so they can't fly 7 days a week, or triple daily service. So what we've done with them, and in the final proposal that you'll see, is a combination of them doing our 4 peak days, or some combination where they can go 4 times to O'Hare, 4 times to Midway, and that's pretty much our limitation in the summer. And this is really more for our summer operations, and I'll give you kind of an overview. So, and maybe I'll digress a little bit. What we typically look at is, in this market, and it's what we fly now, is that's just rounded, just for rounding purposes. About 9 months out of the year, we fly a single 19-seat turboprop once a day to Midway. And we have the luxury of Midway, which we don't have in O'Hare, is to sit all day in a parked area with Atlantic, and we do that so that we can connect as many people back. We have a day trip philosophy where people want to go in for business, but to be able to sit on the ground as long as we can so that we can make just about every connection coming back in, whether it's a late morning or a mid to late afternoon connection coming back up here. That's been our philosophy since day one, is go sit on the ground, get as many, people are going to do their own Southwest tickets or Delta tickets, and do their double bookings. We've had some other technology where they can search on our website, but we've not been able to perfect it yet to find connecting available flights. And that's what we do. So 9 months out of the year, we do 1 flight a day, we sit all day. And then in the summertime, we've always revamped that based on your market for those close to 3 months of bringing in either the 30-seat, a combination of either the regional jet or mainly the 30-seat turboprops, running in with multiple daily frequencies on our peak days, so that we have a large O&D market out of the Chicago region, as well as connecting market in going up to this region because of beauty and the second homes and just everything you have to offer here. It's a beautiful place. In the summer, it's still beautiful in the winter, but I'll tell you, it's very beautiful in the summer. You got Sleeping Bear Dunes, you have the different golfing, Golf Manistee and all the places out there. So that's what we've targeted, and we've done very well with hitting some peak employment months over the past 6 years. We have an approximate 10% growth year over year. So we don't think we're doing something totally wrong, but we are recognizing that we have to replace a carrier because reliability is going down. It's affecting even ourselves from a customer service level because of the communication gap that we're getting, even to the point where we want to now start operating some of our own flights. So this is Freight Runners. They have a 30-seat EMB turboprop. They'd be combined with another carrier that we'll introduce further in the slides. We think it's a good option. The price point is good. I've relayed that to Barry, but you'll have dissected schedules and options within those price points that you can look at and determine what fits in your alternate EAS profile if you consider alternate EAS as one of your choices. So this would be combined with another very good carrier, which is Ultimate Jet, that we've worked with for probably since 2009. We do all their GDS distribution. They have 8 independent routes right now, 7 or 8. They are not EAS, they're not subsidized, they're just a corporate airline, and they found a little niche flying into FBOs, but from hubs. They go into Atlanta, Charlotte, Cleveland, O'Hare, Morristown, New Jersey, and they're based out of Cincinnati, and I think they do Memphis as well, so they might be up to 7. I think it is 7 routes. And we've worked with them since 2009. They use our reservation system for the GDS connectivity, and we have a very, very, very good relationship with them. They've offered to work with us in the AS market because of our relationship, and you'll see a little bit more of that down the road. So this profile would be Ultimate Jet. They fly predominantly Dornier 328 regional jets. They also have EMB 135 regional jets. The good thing about them is in the proposal for the summer, now again, right now we still have the 19-seater up through the summer. And we have an odd transition point because your contract ends in the middle of that peak, you know, and I think 9 flights, you know, or 5 flights at 45 seats, you know, we're at 60 seats, and we're hitting 60 seats and more sometimes, where we'd like to be able to expand the service, which we have to address as well. So the good thing about them is they have come in with a pretty good bid. They have beautiful aircraft. They have 7 or 8 in their fleet right now. They have 3 others that are on a kind of a private lease back, plus 1 or 2 EMB 135s, I'm not sure. But they also have a plane that sits all day in Chicago, just like us. So they fly up here with a different Dornier jet, and they sit all day at the FBO. So they only do Monday through Friday, but Monday through Friday we have a backup plane in Chicago, which is probably one of the better qualities in the bid with Ultimate Jet, because of the reliability factor we want to create, and the idea that in the summer, while we're introducing a new market, which will be O'Hare, we need high quality and we need backup service. So they would bring a dedicated plane based here, and they would also have the backup plane, which is a regional jet in Midway, that could hop over to O'Hare, or of course run the Midway runs and give us extra support. We've only been able to find a gate, and if you look at connecting times, you probably have to do an afternoon departure for O'Hare, because we've only been able to find an afternoon gate for O'Hare anyway. But at least getting down, they can make a bank. During our peak, they like to come up here in the afternoon on the Thursday, Friday. The Sunday, Monday, they like to go down early, but not, you know, we still will have we will have the Midway going down to Chicago early. So it's talking about Chicago morning departures on your peak period, so they can get back to work, you know, on Monday morning, or you know, late Sunday night. We'll have 1 to O'Hare, 1 to Midway. So that's kind of the Ultimate Jet profile. We've been able to negotiate that all these bids, if we keep them on the same frequency of seats, or right around the same delivery of seat quantities, they're all about the same price, and I've relayed that to Barry. So it's a matter of making a choice of who's going to serve the market best. So, you know, I think it's obvious. They have a fitness, they have their AOSSP, so they can fly into sterile operations. I put them here because I think that's probably the best bid for the best price going into this summer. And dealing with, you know, from now to the summer, we have, of course, corporate flight management, and then we also have another alternative, if you hit the page there. So we don't work a lot with Key Lime Air, which is the Denver Air Connection. They're another 380 operator. We're not real big on the Metro 3s. You know, we have nicknames for them when they come in flying cargo at our FBO, but the one good thing that they did provide for us is they happen to be in a place this summer where they don't have business for 2 of their Metro 3s. So the only reason we consider them is they offered to bring in 2 planes, 2 Manistee based here, so that we had automatic backup of an aircraft here. You know, so I think that you know, brings merit. It's not the ideal aircraft, although I mean they're not, you know, horrible, But the idea that we do have a backup aircraft here is good. I think what it also does is we keep with the 19-seat profile and a 19-seat aircraft. We're now hitting O'Hare, which is a new market with a little bit smaller of a base, to test that market and see what it's going to do for us. So that's an opportunity, although I still tend to think that 30-seat plop in there, it gathers up a lot of people at the right timing. I think would be with Ultimate Jet is still my ideal situation because they also have backup here in the marketplace. And we've not done a lot of work with the Denver Air Connection, although they have a fairly decent reputation. And again, the idea that they would be bringing in 2 planes based here for the they could start anytime they want. They could take over for corporate flight management, or they would start in the peak summer, depending on what you guys would decide if you went into the alternate AS. I didn't know in your presentation if you talked about really if you were having 2 crews or 1. We are really a predominant 1 crew base where we do a change out either every week. It's like a 1 week on, 1 week off, or sometimes it's a 10-day on, 10-day off profile. That does create limitations sometimes when we have mechanical issues, and it does put a confinement on our day, but it's no other confinement than any other air carrier. So 2 crews is better than 1 that has sitting around. But if you're only flying the 1 aircraft and the crew can do it, and in our profile the crews can do it in 1 day, we do only base 1 crew here. We've seen the problem with some of the delays late at night where overnight then we'd have a delay in the morning the next day. The good thing, again, pushing back to Ultimate and even the Denver Air Connection, is the idea of the backup plane for the Denver Air Connection helps a lot because maybe we can recover during that span of time. But the good thing about Ultimate is actually have a crew, a second crew here in, well, at least in Midway, that can help us recover 5 days of the week, which is pretty important. And they're based in Canton, Ohio, so they're not, I think it's Canton, yeah, it is Canton, Akron, Ohio. So they're not too far from here as well. So we were looking at our new profile to increase our performance, to find someone more local, because we think that's very, very important. Okay, go to the next slide. So this is us in the future. We're not going to be called Westland. I just happen to be doing a pre-purchase on this aircraft right now. I'm flying to Saskatoon, Canada today. We're in the middle of a C-check on this aircraft. It's a beautiful aircraft. It's a Beech 1900. It's well maintained. It will have 19 seats in it, or 18 with a potty. We are not really under that vein of taking something that can carry 19 seats and shrinking it down to 9. I don't think it's, it does work. I mean, it gives you a lot of comfort, there's no doubt about it, but it was designed for 19 seats, and I think given your need for growth in the market, having more seats, so you run this 19 seats twice a day is double than running 9 seats twice a day. And that gives us the ability, and we hope by the time the summer comes, we should have our 10 or more, and if not, Ultimate Jet would work with us on having this on their certificate as an additional backup if we needed to add additional seating capacity, because we don't know what O'Hare's going to do. That may be a big burst for us, and we want to make sure we can handle that capacity. Plus, they have, with the second aircraft in Chicago, we have more flexibility to add flights, even if it is on the 30-seater. So it's just taking, when you add a third flight, you're going from 60 to 90 seats. That's a big jump. So 60 to 79 is a little bit better. If we had a 9-seat up here, complementing that, it might be perfect. I've spoken with Barry about some things we could do, like our little Navajo out there, if we wanted to do Mackinac Island or something like that, and maybe just as a little recovery plane to shuffle the pilots around, because the pilots could be here and we got to get a plane somewhere else. So we may bring that up for the summer, but it is key that we focus, because there's an odd transition period, and I do recommend that you get that change with the DOT for future years. So when you do have a bid coming out, you're aligned outside of your peak, so you're not disrupting that at all. I think that's pretty important. So our goal is to, we're testing some markets with just some Cape Air style twin piston aircraft. We have 3 of them, so it's not like we're short of backup aircraft. We run 2 flights a day to Pittsburgh. We start in April, so that'll be the start of doing our own scheduled service. And then as we bring this on and go for our 10 or more, we will now have a 19-seat aircraft that we will predominantly keep in Pennsylvania, unless we decide it makes sense to move up here. But even from Pennsylvania, it's a 2.5-hour flight to recover. Not much unlike Nashville, but the idea that we would have it available and we would control it, I think, would help our overall picture from the alternate EAS side. So we do see that what's happening, if you hit the next slide, in us trying to control our own destiny, what we've recognized that we're subject to a lot of limitations, some brought on by ourselves and having so many years of enjoyment of such high quality service, and we didn't have to call people a lot, we didn't have delays, and we didn't have the things that we're dealing with now, more recently over the past year. So we've had to do some things. So what we did in Texas is I bought a ground handling company. So we replaced all of our outstations that we subcontracted with our own people, and that greatly increased our customer service in those stations. And we plan to apply that in the Manistee market, at least for the summer, definitively, but probably year round. We're probably going to do it first as a purser, like a station manager. So that'll be a point person for every single operation. Above and beyond we're limited in handling agents in both O'Hare as well as Midway. Airports, they run the Stewart Airport. They're a big company. They have a reputation. They're better in some markets, worse in others. We have kind of a communication gap in the Midway market where the agents just are, they're just not out there doing the announcements that they're supposed to according to their training. They're not getting out the email blast. We've started taking over some of that in-house now with our own customer service call center. So we're doing the email blast now to keep them updated as we get information from the airline when there is a mechanical. And unfortunately, what we've experienced a little bit with CFM is those trickling delays that have just really hurt our performance and our delivery overall over the past. We've seen it really over the past year, kind of coming in as they started growing, in leaps and bounds. We're a small company. We're 50 employees. We're not a large company within the regional sky, and the parent is Aviation Technologies. And then the other ground handling company is about 50 people as well. That's based in Austin, Texas. We actually run the Austin South Terminal, and then we do the ground handling for Frontier Airlines there as well, and Sun Country Airlines, and a few other smaller airlines. So our goal, what I want to say is we do recognize where, sometimes it takes a little while, but we recognize where we're seeing our faults. Some controllable by us, some not, and we need to figure out problems to fix that. So better customer service, that's why I put the wanted on there. So we are actually interviewing people now for that position down in Chicago. We think they do a great job up here in Manistee, of course, both with the communication and the customer service orientation. So we're going to focus on our weak points. We do think that we've developed a market, a predominant O&D market, but not all O&D, because we do see a lot of connecting traffic go through where they're booking 2 tickets. A lot of times people don't input that information, so we don't have it. So if they don't input it on our system, or when they go to the counter, we'll ask them, hey, do you have a connecting flight? A lot of times they just say no, even they have one. And we say, you should tell us, because we actually will look for you. We've held our planes, we've done different things when we have that information available to us. So we're only as good as the information we get. But we see where we can have some improvement there, where having a purser or a station manager that is, an employee of Public Charters / North Country Sky will help tremendously. We don't know the entry level into Chicago for doing our own handling. We're looking at that. We did rent our own space in Midway this year, so we have our own baggage makeup area. We have our own office. So we're kind of on the move in Midway, and that's where we've always been flying predominantly. So we've not looked at that opportunity yet in Chicago. We did find a subcontractor and a gate in the afternoon, and we were very proud to get that, not knowing if we're going to be going there or if you're going to be choosing alternate EAS again. It's real important to know that that summer peak is even potentially more than 60 passengers as a blip. We think it should be more than that. And we do think that the 19 seat a day sitting, to connect all the passengers suffices right now. I'm not going to knock the idea that an interline certainly would be the preference of our company to be able to get an interline. We have the technology to do it. We're on all the GDS platforms, the same that was in another slide. We're e-ticketing. We do our own secure flight, security, TSA communications, and it's our own in-house system. We don't fly to a major hub, so one of the things that happened is we were flying to Midway, so every time we wanted to talk to American, they said, well, when you're bringing 30, 40 people a day to O'Hare, then maybe we'll talk to you. We did 2 cities flying into Dallas this year, so we were at about 15, and that's still not enough for Americans to look at us, but we were lucky to get our own gate at Dallas. I mean, I know you have a great presence in Dallas, and they're actually very friendly down there. They work very well with us, but you got to deliver a sizable amount of people to the hub for them to really want to work with you. You got to have a high quality service. So right now we're still subbing out, but we do think that all of these operators that we presented here have a great potential for definitely our summer peak, and I think we'll manage through the preseason of the summer, and then we'll have some opportunities in the future, even with ourselves, or at least the aircraft that we're purchasing, to again entering into the off season with 19 seat capacity. So that's kind of it. Our pricing points are good. There are some variations you can look at, if you want to put some budgets in, and Barry has some briefing on that, and he'll have all the intricate details. I gave you the overview of the carriers today. We have the intricate schedules, which are pretty much what we've been doing for the past 6 years, so they don't really change much, except for that added O'Hare piece, which is very important to focus on. We don't know what that's going to do. It's a whole different dynamic for us. We're excited about it, but we're also nervous about it. We hope it opens up a channel that will put us in an O'Hare direction into the future, but we think we should test it during our peak, where we know we're going to have a good, strong response. And with a regional jet like Ultimate Jet, I think that's a great way to enter into testing O'Hare for the first time in many, many years. So.
Anybody have any questions? No, thank you.
All right, well, thank you.
I guess I will ask this, Jim, thank you, you went over a lot of information there. Is there a summary of that in a way that we can get it from you through Mary, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you have this, and then you'll have a detail for each of the carriers. With their, like I said, the schedules are predominantly what we predict. The only one that would be a little different in the summer is that we use the 19-seater, where we do a multiple of those aircraft, because I don't think one plane can handle 3 flights a day.
And again, part of, I'll say, the lack of detail on this was what I was trying to get at in my earlier prep on this is that until Friday, he didn't really have an understanding as to what budget, if a qualified carrier came in and did $1.8 million, it would completely change what he could propose.
That's correct.
So once those bids come in, that establishes a dollar amount that we could go to DOT and ask for alternate. So that's why you've been getting all the pieces,
Sure.
different options, and now it's the art of putting it together into something that we think would work for us, if that's the direction we would go.
Yeah, and I am pleased to say that I think there's enough options as you read through it, and you'll have them. I'm going to good old Saskatoon, Canada for a couple of days of freeze and do some records evaluation, but when I get back at the end of the week, or I'll probably do it over the weekend, so you'll have it by Monday morning. You have the complete breakdown. I've given Barry, we've always corresponded back and forth with, generalizations. Hey, this is what the 19C can do, this is what the 30C can do. So now it'll be in a good summary with all the price points on it. So.
Well, thank you. What I had anticipated to do next, and I will bring it up, although I think with, no, that's wrong. With Air Choice 1 not being here and not presenting today, this probably no longer makes sense. But I thought it would be useful for us to actually take our review criteria and apply a scale and basically judge each carrier's bid based on the criteria that we had put out there. And then if we had wanted to weight them, we could do that, etc. But since we've only had one full presentation, we've got 2 more coming, this is probably premature.
I think it's premature.
However, it does potentially put Boutique at a disadvantage, because if we do this at a time where everyone else is here, we can get feedback from a carrier saying, oh, well, why are you rating us that low? Didn't you hear this piece of it? So there's also, you could argue that maybe we should go through Boutique today, since they're here, for us to do that evaluation. So again, it made more sense when Brandon and I were talking about this on Friday, when we thought Air Choice 1 was going to be here. Now that they're not, I'm not sure. So I leave it to the board as to how you want to proceed evaluating. And you could do a completely different way. This is just something that we came up with since the board had suggested these criteria.
Am I not a suggestion or not?
I guess I'd like to start out by saying, I would like to have in my mind all 3 sets of data from all 3 potential bidders that we have now, before I sit down and evaluate anybody.
Well, I don't totally understand if you're gonna have a total proposal together in a short period of time, or you're gonna have something that'll take until summer to really get all those different elements.
No, you'll have a complete, I have to respond within your response period, so you'll, by next Monday, you'll have the complete detail of each of the carriers you saw here with their pricing and their schedules.
But he's during alternate air, not central air.
That's, we're looking at apples and oranges.
We are, to a degree.
The alternate air proposal has nothing to do with what we have with the 3
Correct.
people who have
But you
submitted.
should rate us, just to be fair, we should be rated because we lack in some areas, we're strong in other areas, when you look at the type of equipment and the backup, all that's very important. So I don't disagree with a rating. I almost think that you should take each individual, in my opinion, is take each individual carrier, like get Sean here on the box, maybe the star, get him on the star, and I think he can best present and to the board, and make his arguments on their strengths, so they have their strengths and what they're gonna do, and then they rate that one.
So
against
maybe
someone else
what
in the
would make
box.
sense is, if we can get everyone else that's remaining in one meeting, that you would be on the phone like Doug was today, and so that when we got to this point, you could at least have the opportunity to hear the discussion and chime in if you thought you were being unfairly treated in comparison to other carriers.
Could also fly one of their glasses in for us.
I think that it's necessary that we have all the data, all 3, before we start making a decision. And I understand your presentation is going to give us an option which would more satisfy our unique requirements for essential air, not necessarily what DOT is gonna say, yeah, this is the one we like, this is the one that will service Manistee most appropriately.
Correct.
In some ways, we would be judging our carrier on 6 years of experience.
Right.
With a little bit of, these are things that they've said they might want to change. But I mean, that's actually probably the easiest to grade because everyone else, we're taking them at their word or, other people's words and references. We know exactly what we get with North Country Sky. So I wanted to mention that because again, the board has options, although given the time, I'm glad actually everyone else did show up because we would have been here all day.
And one thing I would just add is, yeah, it is good for us to be here when our competitors are here.
Yes.
If it's an open meeting.
Yes, unfortunately, you had asked me if others were going to be here and the information I had at the time.
Right.
And that changed yesterday.
Well, we work hard to get places.
So I think that then is probably wraps up that piece
Yes.
of things.
Until we can get the other players
Until we
together.
can coordinate a subsequent meeting.
And I
I
definitely
concur,
want you to
Brett.
be president
I concur.
with, online.
Yeah.
You can't be here in
Sure.
person.
Sure.
I want you to be totally involved.
Sure, yeah.
As you. It's important because the
Well,
only
things are said that if we're not there, they wouldn't be said, that sort of stuff happens.
I've never heard of such a thing.
Yeah. The goal is to eventually provide the best service for the least cost to Manistee Blacker Airport. That's what we're going.
Well, that's part of the puzzle. The other part is the ability to grow. And how many seat is your other plane if it gets to that?
I mean, it's similar. I mean.
Similar to what?
It's
9 seat?
It's 9.
Yeah.
Everything's 9
Yes.
at best.
Right.
There were times when we had the capability, we turned away seats, and we were over 70 potential passengers in the flight. Well, in your particular case, that's like a whole flock of planes,
Sure. Sure.
Now, I mean,
Well,
there are benefits in having frequency too.
Yeah.
So
Yes, there is.
since you're talking about this, I probably should zoom in since I've got lots of wasted screen real estate there. Not knowing what we were going to be talking about, I've got lots of statistics here, but since you mentioned this, I bring this up. This shows basically our current number of passengers that we've done this past year.
Outbound.
Total. This is the various carriers and their basic bids. Now, we've had further discussion that you're going to shift some of these numbers around, presuming DOT, allows that.
Yeah.
So if we look at Air Choice 1, on their basic bid, 2 flights a day, they can't actually even shift things around. DOT says minimum 2 flights a day. So that's 1,080 seats a month. We apply that to our current load factors, we're, way short in July and August with just 2 flights a day. It just doesn't work. And our experience with current is because of the nature of our travel, everyone wants to come up for the weekend and then leave at the end of the weekend. It's hard to get much above 75% load factor because this summer, July, we had 43% of our flights were sold out, but yet we only had 73% load factor because the other flights in the other direction were about half full. Average is out, 100%, 50 is average 75. So it's hard for us, due to that, to get above 75. So that really says that for 5 months of the year, this doesn't even come close to working for us. Their second option of 3 flights a day. Now that does potentially give them some capability of shifting things around. Even with 3 flights a day, you're not hitting this. Now, boutique is basically a mirror. It just there was 19, yours was 18 a week, so slightly different. But if you start shifting, here where it's 32%, you want to bring that up, moving it to here, and even some of these other shoulder months, it's much more doable. Great Lakes with 260-seaters, you know, yes, there are a few days in summer where 60 wouldn't work, but overall, you've got way more capacity than you need. I throw in here North Country Sky. This is what we've done the last year. And this is what the current alternate model has allowed us to successfully do, is to change seasonally that load. We're running about what Air Choice 1 or slightly less in the winter. We start ramping up in the summer. We hit a peak of summer. Our load factors are still a little bit light in January, but are much more balanced across the year, still peaking. And I've raised this to the board that this past summer, when we're getting 40% or close to 50% of flights sold out, we're hitting a wall there that's preventing our growth. So this is what has historically attracted us to the alternate model. We've heard boutiques say they can do something similar with their 9-seat. Air Choice 1 in their first proposal can't even do it. Potentially could in their second, but we need to be asking them that. And Great Lakes has capability to do lots of things, but it's a non-desirable hub currently.
So Barry, when you go over 100%, there's actually
We would be turning tons of people away.
walking then,
Yes.
or riding on.
Yep.
And our plan was, here we've got 32, these are the low months, right? December, January, February.
Right.
With our changing this, it takes us up to about 60 to 70% load factor for those months. And that's what you want, is 60 to 70% consistently. And for these months, with that additional frequency, we're at 70% load factor.
Yeah, but
So that was our plan.
what we're hoping, if you have the connectivity, that will increase significantly.
Right. I mean, it was interesting, we ran the numbers on Friday. The total seats that you would have in the market per your plan is about 15,000. We're at 10,000 now. If we want to, at a minimum, continue our 10% a year growth, that means at the end of this contract, we'll be at 12,000. 12,000 with 15,000 availability is getting pretty tight.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that it's not doable, it's just getting tight.
Was your contract for 2 or 4?
2
Two.
years.
Yeah, but you don't want to award a contract based on perfect assumptions either.
Well, there's also, I've seen a lot of different communities, and we've been doing this for 20, 30 years, but I have the benefit, on the other hand, of seeing, we're doing this in 17 different places, and seeing what happens over time. And you don't, there are only so many people that live in this town, and there's only so many people that are going to come and visit. Some years you're going to have more people, some years you're going to have less people, and so to set an expectation to have 10% growth to infinity, that's not realistic. You know what I mean? So,
but we base that on the fact that in 2012 we did 21,000
sure,
overnight.
Sure.
So we know that there's a lot of untapped growth.
So my question about that is, if you look at those months, how does it break down? Because I didn't see that data, and so I don't know. Maybe if do you have that monthly data?
I can get you,
because it's a very important
Yes.
question.
Yes.
Because how much you might be, for example, there's only the population in Manistee is 8,000, 7,000.
62.
Okay, 6,000.
Right.
Right. So the question is, in these non-travel, I guess you could say tourist months, how much variation is there going to be for the next 5 or 10 years? In January, we've got January 439 people for 2017, February 474, and you're not even close, on your capacity. For most of these periods here, you're not even close. You're 43%, 54%. You're not capacity constrained, right? And so can you really expect many more people, 10% every year or whatever, for those or is the growth that we're talking about really just in the warmer months?
actually I think for the short term, the growth is more in the non,
Correct.
Uh-huh.
Correct.
because we have not had an interline. So
Uh-huh.
that, no tourists aren't coming here. It's
Yeah.
all about servicing the needs, and right now they're going to one of the 3 other
Right.
airports that they have connectivity options, because they're not flying to Chicago for, their vacation. They're
Sure.
going Florida, west, south, east, whatever. So I think there's more untapped potential in the off-season, but in the peak season, Chicago is such a huge market, we are barely scratching the surface. I mean, Traverse City is getting crushed right now. I mean, they're one of the most expensive cities in the summer from a hotel standpoint, et cetera. I mean, we are the stepchild of that. We wish we have that. So I think there's growth all year round. So I think for the foreseeable future, for the next 4 or 5 years, I think 10% or more is realistic. But at some point, we do tap out with, the people that live here. There's only so much business travel they're going to do. Then the rest becomes just leisure travel, and how much can we as a region and a community market that. So.
No,
Barry,
makes
don't you
sense.
think the reason why we did over 10,000 is because we had a name brand, Frontier? And so any of these airlines, they don't have a name brand.
It's
was
the
a fact.
connectivity in the interline that was huge. Name brand helped, although realistically, when we started, no one here had ever heard of Frontier. They didn't serve any place.
That's a big assumption
The
there.
big thing right now in today's society is be able to go to Expedia or Cheapo Air or whatever,
God,
and
don't
type
go
in
Cheapo Air.
Manistee to wherever, and something comes through, because right now, we don't hit the screen.
Right, big problem. Yeah. Well, one thing that we did in Carlsbad, for example, they had, we got the number of round trips that they got increased because of demand. The community was pushing for that. Similar situation in Thief River Falls. We're gonna see what happens. We've got 20, I think we're at 18 round trips a week right there. Our service there has been very, very popular. We have increased enplanements like never before. And they had Great Lakes, they had the interline, people weren't flying it because it wasn't as reliable enough, right? And so people really like our plane. They also like the additional frequencies. People, when you've got more choices during the day, it's not like one flight in the morning, one flight in the evening. It's like, oh, I can go different times. There's a benefit.
So flexibility is a big.
People like the different times. I mean,
Less layover time.
So with Thief River Falls, they are pushing for more frequencies. The airport manager said, Sean, how do we get more frequencies? I'm like, hey, you've got to push for that with the DOT. So we bid more frequencies with them, and we'll see how the DOT responds. So that's one way that we can grow, is just say, okay, we'll fly more.
And I'll point out to you that in the US code that establishes in the requirement, or the minimum requirements section, there is wording in there that says service necessary at a 50% load factor for 9-seat aircraft.
Right.
DOT conveniently ignores that.
Yes.
That it's gotta change, because, I understand them, watching the taxpayer dollars, but they'll throw dollars away in other ways, but yet prevent growth to the airports when they're doing things right. So.
I guess my follow-up question to you before you take off, and that is this market on the edge of being too big for what you guys are trying to niche?
I don't think so. I mean, we're doing close to 20,000 people in Merced right now, right? So that's
How many trips a day is that?
5.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's some of the, each market is a little bit different. Our Oakland trip there is very short, so it's not very popular. But we fill it in sort of by being creative. But anyway, I mean, doing 5 trips a day here for 2 or 3 months, like, that's no problem for us.
Could you do 7?
Sure. We do.
No, I realize you're.
We do 110 flights a day. You know, it doesn't really, to me, hey, we can fly people.
You know, you are still going to be collared with 18 flights a week, right? And if you've got 2 days, that you're pulling 7 flights, that's 14 flights.
Well,
You only have 4 for the rest of the
I
week.
mean, our plan was to fly fewer flights per week in January, or December, January, and February, and shift those flights to June and July. So really, every week we'd be doing 42 flights instead of 18, or what's the number? The higher total, much more flying during your peak seasons, or your peak months of July and August.
So we're not looking at taking the 18 a week and massaging it, we're talking
30, exactly,
the
exactly.
whole
And
year.
not only taking, not 18, but 30 round trips a week, and then also there's a potential to massage back, right? So you even have potentially more seats flying than in these with an Embraer and so on. So.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. Mary, you good?
I'm good.
Then we can continue on with our regular meeting. And gentlemen, please accept my appreciation for your coming.
Yeah, well, thanks
The
for
whole
coming.
board is,
Thank you, guys.
And feel free to sit through the rest of the boring stuff. I mean, assuming you're gonna wanna stick around, because I would like to chat with you more afterwards, but,
Sure.
so, since you've come all the way.
Well,
What is your
we
timeline?
have a flight to catch in Traverse City, so we were planning.
We have a flight at 4 o'clock. Just saying.
Yes.
Did you get my note? Did you get my, I sent you an email. I was trying to move it up to 3:30.
Oh, well, I gotta go.
And we have a little time that we can hang out.
Okay. What time is your flight?
Our flight out of there is at like 4:15 or something like that.
Okay.
well, we'll be out here by 2 because I've got another meeting to go to. So.
Okay.
And they know how to control me, because I tend to make things long, so.
Okay.
Never noticed though.
Be the fastest.
We'll let you do your rest of your meeting and then,
Okay, thank you.
yeah, thank you.
Here.
How are you? Okay, we're at item number 7. Approval of the minutes. Everybody have an opportunity.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Mayor left. Is this just a bathroom break, or would we?
No, I'm not a voting guy.
No. Still have a board.
That's it, man, thanks.
Treasurer's report.
We don't have that, Russ was planning to finish it this morning, but then, like I said, he
Okay,
is.
so we have no treasurer's report. It'll be at the next meeting, I presume.
Yes.
Committee reports. Executive committee. Did not meet. Bylaws committee. There is no.
I don't believe they met.
Did not meet. Budget committee.
Has not met since the last meeting.
Since last meeting. Capital projects committee.
We did not meet.
Okay. So now I guess we can move on to the airport director's report.
Okay. No airport incidents to report for the month. I'm gonna hand out actually a packet of things, which contains this next item. It also contains some of the other things, well, it contains that last load factor slide that I put up there. So the last page of the handout I'm giving you is our airport insurances renew in January. And so this is a little bit of a summary. And I guess I probably should bring it up on the screen too. Actually, I don't think I have that in a format I can bring up on the screen quickly. So just kind of talk you through this. So basically our rates are pretty much unchanged for our liability policy for 2018 at $4,245. Our auto is going up a bit, about $100 a month, and the property insurance is actually decreasing about $200 a month. So overall, staying status quo with our coverages will save about $100 versus last year. So the insurance environment for airports is good. We've not seen really any significant increase, probably in close to a decade. However, there is one thing here, and because of the timing of this meeting, we could make changes, because these renew at the end of this month, and that's with the liability. We currently carry a $5 million liability limit, which is what we have had for the history of the airport. That's probably a little bit on the low side, although it's not uncommon for an airport our size to have that limit. If we wanted to raise it, the next logical bump up would be to a $10 million liability limit, and you see that that would raise our prices about $2,200 a year. So I wanted just to raise this to the board. We have this option. The third page of that is what I'm talking to. If you wanted to, otherwise we'll just be renewing at our status quo.
Any historical of what claims have run?
From a liability standpoint, I don't think we've had a claim we've had some property claims, but nothing under the liability in the 10 years I've been here, so.
So I would say just leave it where it is.
So, okay. Then, that is easy.
Just out of a question, the auto, that covers, what all vehicles, does that cover all the snow plows?
No.
Covers Barry's car.
The yellow pickup truck that we have, that we occasionally drive into town, pick up supplies, that is what is covered under that insurance. All of the equipment is covered under our property.
Okay.
Because it's not expected that it's used on the road, although we have the right to drive it to get maintenance or something. So that's basically just the one vehicle, the pickup truck. Any other questions?
Do you need any motions in regard to this?
No. So next page, oh, I didn't hand out, did I hand out my reports?
You did.
Okay, good.
Are you talking about this one, or this one I'm talking about?
No,
There's other monthly ones about
No.
accidents and comments and so on.
I've got so many things printed out here. And, wow, I didn't.
Is this the
How
print
about
version of what was
proposals?
sent to
Yeah.
us?
Those two, you
Yes.
handed out?
Yes. No, I printed everything else out except my report. So you're gonna have to use the screen.
Hey, we're saving paper for the first time in 5 years.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Paper.
Hey, it's not good for the paper industry.
I do have printouts of pretty much everything else that has been discussed
Not
today.
good at all.
From the mouth of a retired paperman.
Okay, our employment numbers and performance for December. So we had a total of 691 passengers, which is actually a 2% decrease from last year. So this is the first time in 20 months that we've seen a decrease in our numbers. And you can kind of figure out why that was. If you look at the performance, we only had 44% of our flights in December on time. We had 7% canceled and about 50% were delays. There were some significant performance problems over Christmas, which Jim's presentation alluded to, and he is working to really sever ties with CFM for some of those issues.
Barry, were there those delays in the Chicago area coming out of there, or delays get an
I
idea.
mean, you get a little, I mean, you expect this time of the year with weather
I mean,
that there are more delays. We saw most of them though were mechanical related issues that just spewed over and went from, bad to worse to ultimately canceled.
Like our friend Steve over here from the last time.
Those types, yes, yes. Any questions on that? Passenger fare numbers. So our average fare, for travel next month as of this week, out of Manistee versus, I'm not going to be able to highlight that. We're at a 330, Traverse City 326, Grand Rapids 252, Muskegon 362. So we're higher than Traverse City, but less than Muskegon right now, and Grand Rapids is always the least expensive. So we're not where we were last month. If you remember last month, it was the good old days with Southwest having really good fares, and we were really looking competitive. This is more where we've been, us and Traverse City being about the same. I don't know why Muskegon is so high this month, but again, some of the questions I was asking of Boutique is, when United controls things, you don't have any say necessarily as to how their fares are. Why is Muskegon $40 more than Traverse City this month? I don't know. So any questions on that?
No, just a comment, because I'm familiar with Houston and out of Grand Rapids, I never see a price out of Houston with Delta for $198.
That's what I was gonna say, because I
Does
fly
not
to Denver
happen.
twice a month and I don't get that low of a rate.
It's what it was. I mean, it's sometimes how fares work.
Can you
It's,
book my flight?
Is that part
Now,
of being on the board?
it may not be hours that you want to go, so I don't know
I'm
how.
flying out Thursday
You
at
know,
5:40 in the morning, so that's not the
These are-
time I chose.
These are always 30-day advance bookings to get the cheapest fares, so. Yes, they vary a lot. But an average across a bunch of things gives you a feeling as to where we sit. So then, capital improvement projects. So our land acquisition, we have signed the contract with Prina Newhoff to move forward with that. We are waiting for the appraiser to complete the appraisal. I know that there have been discussions with Mr. Adamczyk in explaining what some of the options are going to be. We're probably at least 30 days away, if not 60 days away, for next steps really to be moving forward. That appraisal process is about 6 weeks. So just not a lot, but it's moving. The other project that is likely to be funded this year by the FAA is the design contract for a runway resurfacing that will be done the following year. I'm anticipating that Prina Newhoff will get us a contract for that for MDOT to approve. Probably our next meeting, although our next meeting is also a week earlier, so it might not be until the March meeting, but either next month or March, we should see a contract on that. That work would probably be done this summer.
And MDOT has to approve it?
Yes, MDOT approves all contracts related to airports and the FAA.
So the surfacing would occur in 2018 or 2019?
2019 is the current plan on that. Air service, I think I've touched on all of this. Well,
So
not
just-
necessarily all of this, but
Just out of curiosity,
Yes.
when we go to that, when that project comes up, that's gonna, we'll be down for a while if I know those projects.
that is part of the process that we're gonna have to go through. I mean, Traverse City just did a major project this summer, and the nature of that contract is they were working there 24 hours a day. So generally we can push for, because we're a scheduled air service airport, for that type of a project. It increases costs, obviously, to be working around the clock. But for the nature of what we're doing, that's what I would hope we could get, and that's really realistically the best we can do.
Yeah.
We've got one runway that is usable by the air carrier although technically maybe with the 9-seat, we could maybe use our crosswind. So,
That's a
you know,
no.
there would be some downtime as long as it's scheduled and not in our peak, you know, that's, pavement fails and it has to get replaced, and that
So
has.
try to be scheduled off-peak times, then we take?
Well, that would be what we would be
Trying to get-
planning for. So I already talked about our December numbers. January, it's still a little early to tell since we're only a week into it, but it looks like flat, maybe a little bit slightly up. Our numbers going into January, our advanced bookings were up 15%, and usually that kind of narrows as we get to the end of the month. So I'm thinking 0 to 5% increase unless we have a lot of canceled flights, which will wipe that out. Talk about performance. We did have extra flights over the holidays. There were 2 days before Christmas, 2 days after Christmas, where we had 2 flights scheduled instead of the normal 1 this time of year to handle load. Those flights were basically sold out. Those were also days that we had cancellations, and they brought in a regional jet to recover, and people got their places, but not necessarily timely. We still only have a published schedule for another 7 weeks, so I know Jim has something in the works, and I'm hoping that that will be extended this week. But we're losing passengers now because they can't book more farther out. I mean, they can't book spring break or anything at this point. So, quick marketing update. We did a fair sale over on the 21st, the winter solstice fair sale. This is the 3rd year in a row we've done this same sale. We sold on that day 100 seats. Our typical this time of year is probably 15 to 20 seats, so good response. A year ago, same exact sale, we had 86 seats sold, so a little bit better. On the marketing side, we've been doing some testing of display advertising on the Google platform. We currently do some remarketing, which also are display ads, but they're targeted at people who visit our website. This is really just pushing out to people who don't know us. They seem to be effective based on the statistics we've gathered. The plan would be to add this into our mix of options for the summer. Overall, though, we're kind of quiet on marketing right now because people can't book beyond 7 weeks, so it doesn't really make sense to be trumping a lot, and with so much possibility of change, we're not really sure where we want to spend money at this point, so we're in the slow part of the year not spending a lot.
What was the fare on those seats, those 100 seats?
The nature of the sale was all seats for our lowest fare of $129, which realistically over this time period, there weren't a lot of advanced bookings. Most people could have gotten that seat without the sale. But it's just bringing us to people's attention and making us think of us. And pushing price as a means of doing that. Miscellaneous items, no word from George Saylor yet. Airport zoning, really no update on any of this except on the solar side. So last month, Jeff raised this solar project that is apparently going in at the, I guess now probably former Heathlands Golf Course.
Not yet.
Okay. I have a call scheduled with them tomorrow morning, but beyond that, last week I received a call from a company called Synergy. They're looking at putting in an 8 to 12 acre solar farm, and we're looking at our property, and they've already said here's what the lease rate would be. They're coming in very aggressive. Innovatus, I've had contacts with them in the past. I've kind of said, well, we had plans at the board to discuss some of this. I'll get back to them when, but now seems like everybody's coming out of the woodwork looking at solar in this area. And then there's CBS Solar, Alan O'Shea's company, that has wanted to get on our agenda, but everything else with airline has been taking precedent, so that gets keeping moved back. So there's a lot actually happening in that area. I don't know what's driving it right now, but I have follow-up meetings with pretty much everybody on that list to try to dig into more.
Synergy Power actually approached you?
Yes.
Looking for space?
Yes.
Thad Taylor, the city manager, steered them towards Barry. I think that's probably the one.
Now, if that was put on the airport property, would all regulations or any regulations have to be modified, or does it affect anything?
There are some FAA hoops to jump through, but this is a very common thing at airports, pairing with solar energy, because we've got land that we can't do anything else with except keep it clear of trees.
Win-win.
It's potentially a win-win, so it's just following up. Karina Newhoff, our engineer, is doing some research, because one of the things they asked for is where on the airport would we like something that's 10 acres seated, and they wanted parcel numbers and things like that. So the engineering is basically trying to put together something, a response to them on that.
Could you refresh my memory on a cocoa bed thing, because I've been on the board now for a year, and I've never heard an update from.
We have, and actually with our new board member, there's some interesting background on here. We have on airport property a billboard. It's the Coho Bend billboard
right over here. Yeah,
on
okay.
River and 31 that existed before the airport purchased that parcel. So we kind of inherited it. And for years, no one ever thought about the fact that someone has a billboard and they aren't paying any rent for it. The owner of Coho Bend is Tom St. Dennis. And when we approached him, he said, no way, basically squatters' rights, it's been there so long. Our attorney has said, no, as a government entity, that doesn't exist. And because essentially they're both lawyers, I've been trying to not get involved in trying to have a legal conversation. But getting George Saylor to actually follow up, he keeps saying every time I talk to him, oh yeah, the city's got some business with him, I'll bring it up the next time, and that never happens. So there's some, huh?
Got a chainsaw?
Did you accidentally knock it over when you're cutting the grass?
So, Tom St. Dennis is valuable to us in many ways. I don't think we want to be doing that. But at the same time...
Well, I was just curious about that George Saylor never has anything to say about it after a year.
I'd take it off the agenda until there's a need for it to arise.
Okay.
You know.
We can do that. That's the end of my report.
Any questions of the airport manager before we move on?
One question over here on one that was, when you just handed out, maybe a quick question on load factors. Is that simply the passengers divided by the seats available on the planes?
Yes. Yep. So that basically says how full would we be under those scenarios.
Barry, I got a question in regard to that is, and I'm making assumptions, I don't want to make an assumption. The 10,000 enplanements, that's not passengers leaving, that's incoming and outgoing, correct?
No.
It's strictly one way?
Wait.
No, I think
The 10,000 number that we're currently doing is total. The number to get us at the next funding level, the 10,000 enplanements, is half. So we really essentially need to get
aircraft here.
Yes.
Okay,
so we essentially need to get to 20,000 total passengers. Frontier, that is the benchmark where we need to be. I'll mention this, the third piece of paper in that stapled packet that I didn't talk about is, since Great Lakes didn't really present, this in some ways isn't as relevant, but I pulled the numbers. So looked at what the low fares out of connecting fares would be out of all the hubs we've talked about. I didn't include Minneapolis, sorry Jeff.
That's okay.
But O'Hare, Midway, Detroit, which were the three the board had identified as being suitable hubs, and then Milwaukee. And what we see is that O'Hare is the cheapest, Midway second, Detroit third, Milwaukee the most expensive. Proportionally, it's really weird. It's like $20 each step. But the other thing that Brandon had asked me to do when I was talking with him on Friday about this is to indicate, so on the Milwaukee side, all of those things that have 2 behind them, that means that those are the lowest fares, but they're also a double hop. So when you add in our segment, you'd basically be doing 3 hops to get to those destinations. Because Milwaukee is not a hub for the airlines, so you're generally flying to their hubs and then going to the next hop. So since I put that together, I just wanted to mention it.
Okay, anything else from the director? If not, we'll move on to old business. Land acquisition.
I touched on that in my report.
Go old business, we've done that just real well. Airport zoning, no progress. And expert solutions, I don't know if that's ever gonna come to any kind of.
Well, here's what I think needs to happen, but I don't know when, just because other things are going to take more precedence, is I think as a board, you need to review and do an annual update to our strategic plan. And that would be the time to talk about whether that still fits into the strategy. But I don't think it makes sense to, at this point, do a lot on that particular thing until the authority has time to review the strategic plan. And maybe that could be done March, assuming nothing else comes up, but if you want me to plan to facilitate that and put it on an agenda, I can, or I don't know how you want to do an update on that time.
I think we should just set it up as an annual occurrence. You know, in March, gives us time to start thinking about it. We all have a copy of the plan as now, so we can peruse it and be able to talk intelligently when we do that. So if you want to put it on the March agenda, that's probably a good place to put it.
Because next month we'll be dealing with this
Yes.
stuff most likely still, so.
Okay. Any new business?
That's relevant here, but we need to talk about everybody's schedule if we're gonna have more meetings on this in the next 3 weeks. I know I'm going a ton in the next month. So, has everybody got calendars? Should we talk about it now? Should we?
I mean,
Might as well give them a target date.
okay.
How's the last week of January look for people? Full week. 22nd through the 26th.
I'm gone the entire week. I'm back, I'm available on the 29th, 30th, and 31st if it's not a full day meeting.
And I would say that's too late, given the,
Yeah.
if we were actually gonna
What about the
create.
19th?
I'm gone 19 to 26.
Okay.
I'm available 16, 17, 18, 29, 30, or 31.
Now,
17th.
we have to have this
I'm going
report,
17th too.
we have to have our comments in by the 7th of February.
It's sometime around there. I put that as a placeholder, but I didn't verify that that's actually the date.
How about the 11th?
Going on flying to Denver from 11th through the 15th.
11th, like in 2 days?
Yep.
I'm gone.
Wait a second, wait a second. Yeah, I'm looking wrong, I'm on the wrong damn week, what the heck? 18th?
I'm good the 18th.
I'm good the 18th.
What's the 18th
It's a
for?
Thursday.
This would be
We're
for
trying
the-
to let the other carriers know if they want to come in and do a presentation.
Oh,
We're-
make it the
we're-
18th?
Yeah, we-
Okay, I understand now. Yes, no problem there. The 18th looks good. For me.
What kind of time frame? I've got an Mark and I've got an intergovernmental at 9, that's generally an hour. 10:30, does that work?
It's gonna be a long meeting, isn't it?
With two proposals to talk about, we had two today, so I mean,
Are we better off coming in at 1? Just throwing it out there?
I'm on calendar that day.
Yeah, I'd prefer to do one. That way if I've
Let's
got
do
things to
that.
take care of, I can get them done.
18th at 1 o'clock?
We gotta wait
Are
to
we
hear if they're
talking-
available.
I mean, how do you wanna do it? Do you wanna just put out there, this is the time, show up?
Or do it on the phone.
Or, yeah, call in, and not really give them an option, this is what works for you?
Yeah, the clock is ticking, it's in their favor to go in.
Yes.
That's the only one I heard that somebody didn't say they couldn't be here.
Right.
Right.
Wait a minute, you're not, did you say the 18th?
Yeah, at 1 o'clock.
What, that falls on a Sunday, doesn't it?
No, that's
Thursday.
Thursday.
January 18th,
Use your other calendar.
a week from this
Oh,
Thursday.
January.
Use your other calendar.
All right. Yeah.
Because you, Barry, you thought getting into that 29, 30, 31 week was too,
Too late.
Well,
It's pushing it.
if we are gonna go alternate, I mean, generally I've submitted like a 10-page proposal to DOT that's gotta be written and crafted. Because ultimately, we're the ones that are making the alternate proposal. Jim, isn't. He's giving us some of the information. Or potentially, I mean, options could be, we could go to Boutique and say, would you like to do an alternate proposal with us, or Great Lakes? I mean, it doesn't have to be what we've done before. It just puts us in the driver's seat, we're writing a proposal, and then we have to figure out how to contract the services we're proposing.
And I think, and this is only my opinion, I think the fact that the public was here today kind of muddied up the water a bit.
I mean, yes, but also I understand why he wanted to be here, because as the
Yeah.
incumbent, he wants to know exactly what's going on. And
Yeah.
these are public meetings, so
Yeah.
I can't exclude him.
That's what I'm saying. In my opinion, it kind of muddied up the water because
Right, because we should have looked at
it's,
the essential.
that's the orange. And we're
Yes.
talking about apples.
Yep.
And I said that before.
And again, I was trying to, in my introductory, explain all of that at the same time, but it was what it was.
The question that kind of you asked, I believe, was the oversize. So do we have any idea how many sets of golf clubs, how many skis, how many hunters, and what kind of equipment they're?
It typically isn't that much. However, I'll talk to you. I mean, if you're putting together a package for a group of guys, they're gonna go together, and if this is an option, you're either gonna have one or two, or you might have 8.
Well,
It's
I've flown out of here twice now, and both times there were groups of 6 to 8 people flying out at one time.
Yeah.
I was the oddity flying by myself.
I would say that that's not typically the case. Most travelers are singles, but in the peak time where you're getting more tourist traffic,
That's what it
they
was,
travel
it
in
was this
groups.
summer,
yeah, I mean, I do a lot of quoting, I just quoted a group Friday out of Detroit, but they have 2 coming from Chicago. So when I hear that, immediately I say, look, now I don't have a schedule, and it's hard to send him to look at a schedule right now, but I tell him traditionally we have in June 2 flights a day right out of Midway. Might be O'Hare this summer, but it'd make up that drive time. So I see a lot of, hey, I've got a big group coming, but 2 are from Dallas, 2 are from Atlanta, or 3 are here. I haven't been fortunate to I've got 16 coming from Dallas, or I've got 8 coming from, one destination. But we do promote it whenever we can.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
because I
that's-
don't think a large group can get on one flight, even in our current scenario. If you had 8 people, they'd have to plan so far in advance. I mean, it's hard for me to get a seat on our flights when I'm just myself trying
Plus,
to,
they limit you to 35 pounds now anyway.
or you're paying, or is it?
You can take more, but it's
Yeah.
35 is free.
Okay.
Beyond that, you pay 25.
And these guys said 50 pounds.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the 18th.
That's what I've got.
1 o'clock.
Okay.
Yep.
And you will notice this? A couple days from now. Okay. Let me get back to new business, any additional new business?
Don't we have to set our meeting schedule?
That's next on the line.
Okay.
Okay,
I think, just to mention a very, I think it might be beneficial to contact DOT, contact in Washington. See if we can get a sense of how things are going, what leverage we have, if any, how the game is getting played at the moment. It might be beneficial.
I've already got a couple things that I wanted to follow up with him on. I doubt we will get anything on that, but I will.
It doesn't hurt to ring the bell.
They're usually, I mean, it's very interesting. They won't, if you try to contact them through email, it's like, give me a call, because they can't do anything over email because it's all FOIAble. So, you get a lot more if you're talking to them, but even then.
I will email and try to get a time set up for a call and see what we can.
No,
that's my intent.
Yes.
And so we can actually have some dialogue with them, and I've got a subject matter expert that we can hopefully get some questions answered or
okay.
lead.
Yep.
Moving on to the schedule, it's there, published. Anybody have any concerns about the schedule as it's depicted in the agenda?
If you're gonna miss one, because you're really out of town, let you know, or who do you notify?
The,
Rachel,
somebody.
I'll be out of town for that March date, I'll be on spring break with my kids.
Okay. Everybody is acceptable to that?
Fine for me.
And so be it. Do we have to have a motion, or?
There's no real flexibility in changing it, is there?
No.
What?
The schedule, I mean, it's pretty set, isn't it?
No. We could choose a different day, we could choose a different time, you
Yeah,
can
there's
do
I didn't know
whatever
it was
you
that-
want.
I didn't know it was that flexible. I
Yeah.
didn't pay much attention
Our-
to it, because
It's
it
just
just
a
kinda
big-
is what it is.
Historically, we actually met at noon, historically, then a few years ago it changed to 10, so, but it's, and we
There-
also changed it
There
a
is a
week
reason,
later, it
though.
used
There
to
is
be
a
the
reason,
second Monday.
because
Then
At county
to accommodate
commissioners,
Russ,
we have so
moved
many
it to the third.
meetings that we try not to overlap. So usually when this is put together, it doesn't conflict with other
Yeah.
meetings. So
Yeah.
that's mainly it. So it only impacts, three of us, I guess. So I won't be here for those 2 months anyway.
See, it doesn't matter what schedule it is. So Doug, just follow that guideline there.
Okay? Okay, no
I
concerns?
think you do need to make a motion to approve, because then that gets
So this
posted.
one say no concerns, and I'll entertain a motion to accept the published, or the proposed schedule in the agenda.
Let me ask you this, can you make it to the second Tuesday, next month?
Well, I put it-
Or
Next month.
second Monday, rather?
Next month, yeah.
Yeah.
That is the
Yeah,
one
for
next month.
February it is.
It's March where he can't.
Oh,
March,
okay.
that's the beginning of
Okay.
spring break, so I'm gone
Okay.
from the 16th to the 25th, I'm gone.
Well, what about the second Monday of March as opposed to the third Monday of March? Would that be beneficial, just so we know that going out? And we can make that adjustment.
Well, we're already scheduled for the second Monday of February.
That's because of the
Because of the
holiday.
holiday.
Right.
Can you make it that
Yeah,
one?
I'll be down then, but I don't want to screw up everybody else's schedule if you guys are.
Is that a conflict for anybody else?
That's March, so that's moving it to March.
That'd be March 12th.
I booked that flight 3 months out, and I still didn't get the fare DBA.
Oh, they're probably doing on March 13th.
Yeah, March.
Oh, that's-
I'm gonna be celebrating daylight savings time on that day.
I don't have it in March.
Is that a long celebration?
Well,
Let's make that adjustment, and then, with that adjustment, I will make a motion to adopt the calendar as amended or corrected.
is there a second?
So switching March 19th to 12th.
That's the only change.
And I'll send that out to everybody there.
Okay.
Excellent.
Can we, is there a reason why our calendar isn't melted into the county calendar?
You mean what's posted on the website?
Yeah.
Our meetings should be on there. I take it they're not?
They don't show up.
I've never looked.
Yeah, they don't show up.
Is that because they haven't all been approved yet, or?
No, as an example, this was a published meeting,
Yeah, oh.
and it's, it never shows up.
Oh, I'll talk to Julie about that.
And the reason I say it is because I don't know how other people function, but anything that's on my calendar that shows up, my phone shuts off during that period of time. It just helps me make sure my phone doesn't
Yeah,
go.
so that's simple, there's no reason we can't do it on there.
I should show you that song.
Yeah, I gotta remember to use it.
Oh, you don't have to, once you turn it on, it's.
Once you got it, huh?
Yep,
All right.
shuts off.
Take a look at that.
The other thing, Rachel, is ask Julie about the meeting notifications are coming out now, and they're going on everybody's calendars, electronic calendars. If she might be able to assist in taking care of that for us also. It's a nice, it's very nice to do.
Maybe they're going to eat.
Good night, five. Okay, anything else?
Well, there's a motion on the table. Motion on the floor.
That was discussion, anything else as well? Discussion. Any further discussion? Being none? Roll call, please. Everybody?
You don't
We
need
can
to
do it.
Don't need it, okay, all those in favor? I think that was the last item on the agenda.
I'm sorry, I thought you were asking for more new business.
Quick question, since I'm new and I don't know what committee the person I'm replacing was on, do I need to fill a hole in any of the committees, or am I just a freeloader this year?
We'll set up committees at the next meeting.
Okay.
That was the treasurer, wasn't it, that,
No.
No.
I believe you're right.
yeah,
you're right.
yeah.
So, board concerns? Okay,
So,
six.
yeah, are these handouts for today, or what is this stuff for?
They're all things that you either have in email or were part of the presentation, so
Or we can get a copy
you
here?
can get a copy if you want,
My only comment after
except my presentation.
the bulk of today's is I would not rule out the presentation we had today. I have more open mind since they were here and described some of what their company is. It was, I had a different opinion going into this meeting.
I did too, very much so. My only concern is the ability to grow.
Yeah.
That's the only hangup I have got.
I asked a question about flexibility, specifically for that. And I think it's, the answer they gave was, if they can do that, if they can shift their allocations around.
Is having a merry-go-round of flights out of here though in the summer, is that gonna be a benefit or a?
I think that's a benefit.
I think it's a benefit also. It
You
shows,
get pretty much any connection you want then.
yeah, and it shows activity.
Yeah.
I would like to see something with 20 seats on for those 3 months of the year. But the thing of it is, I think you will see us, under that scenario, I think you'll see our ridership expand tremendously because of the connectivity.
But they don't have the capacity to have a big expansion.
That's just it. That's just it.
I mean, even if you can shift everything around, it's still,
Well,
they got a total of 15,000 seats they're flying the entire year, and right now we use 10 of that.
Yeah, my whole thing with them is they're hung up on a particular size aircraft.
Yeah, and they didn't.
And they are forced into that based on
Apple take care of that.
FAA requirements.
That's their business
The
model.
next, going anything larger, they're a completely different company.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it's just,
Doug, you're absolutely right. It's their business model. That's how they chose to operate. That's what they're operating with.
Yeah. If you just stay open-minded, if it's a 2-year, if you say, if we come to this and we say, okay, let's try this for 2 years, or if that's where the government takes us because of the decisions they're making now from a financial perspective, if it's a mistake, it's a 2-year mistake. If it's not, and we see some growth, and their company changes, or, do we have to have service in the winter? Does this roll to where we're flying 7 months versus 12 months, and we use all those seats where our core business is to get to that number? I don't know. That's just keeping a totally open mind.
I think their proposal would help you with your business traveler because of the comfort and everything else. I guess my concern is, I was thinking the same way you are, it's a 2-year process, so they have capacity to deal with the growth during that 2-year. But then if you have to go back, and you go back to a general airline seat, word of mouth is gonna be, come here, because look at the comfort, look at the quality, and now you're going backwards to a normal airline seat. Is that gonna be a huge negative?
It's an interesting concept, because that's what the whole industry is facing right now. Look out 10 years. Is our goal to extend the runway and have these big jets coming in here really where, 10 years from now, the gyms of the world might be gone and these other bits might be gone, because that airplane's now gonna be 10 years older, that old thing that's flying in here now. So their business model might be the one that,
Well, Barry and I had a brief discussion about this. Part of the thing that's holding us back from doing more junkets or reaching out to those higher end players is the quality of the airplane that's coming in here right now.
Well, they did show tremendous changes in terms of the occupancy in those areas that they went into. So, there's got to be something to it.
it's eye-opening.
Well, anything else, folks?
Last comment I'll have is if anyone has any follow-up questions that they want more information from me, I'm more than happy to sit down with anybody and enlighten, explain, whatever.
Okay.
Well, if you can keep it coming to us before the next meeting, that'd be great. Anything that
I'm
comes up.
not